Chapter 61. Battle with Lysandra. After rising into the sky, Noah surveyed the environment around his manor. As he had suspected, the Resolve Rune's influence reached far beyond his property. The manor sat on the coast, bordered by a large forest, where he often saw deer and raccoons. Now, trees, flowers, and even the animals outside the manor had changed under the rune's power, most noticeably in their size. Noah watched a raccoon stand upright at roughly 1.4 meters tall. By comparison, an adult raccoon is normally only about 40 to 70 centimeters long, so this one had clearly swollen after absorbing life energy. Noah thought of Rocket. He was about this size. Fish near the shore were affected too, leaping from the sea far larger than their species should be. Noah grinned. I could take over this whole area, he thought. He had considered buying the surrounding land before. Now it seemed even more useful, especially for deploying larger Hextech mechanical beasts. Noah, do we need to deal with this now? Lysandra asked, floating at his side. No rush. We'll handle it when we get back. Their trip had a simpler purpose, to test Lysandra's new body. They could have run diagnostics in the lab, but Noah wanted an outdoor run, partly to test capabilities in the wild, partly, he admitted to himself, to spend time with her and build their bond. They headed for the Appalachian Mountains, a long range stretching through the eastern U.S. and Canada. Noah aimed for the rugged western side, sparsely populated country, rough terrain, a good no-man's land for stress testing a body. They arrived in minutes and descended into a remote valley. Here will do, Noah said, landing. His propulsion device scattered leaves at his feet. Lysandra touched down with graceful control. She drifted to the ground without stirring dust. Noah watched with quiet envy. Magnetic levitation really was cool. The valley was bare beneath a steep cliff, no trees nearby, only yellowed earth and oddly shaped boulders. Lysandra's body had been constructed from multiple technologies, project systems, Hextech components, swarms of nanorobots, and augmented by Noah's Resolve rune. She should be formidable. They began with weapons systems. Begin, Lysandra, Noah said, eager. Lysandra lifted her hand and flicked it gently. A prismatic construct of nanorobots shot from her palm at breathtaking speed, faster than most bullets, and struck a 6-meter rock. The construct drilled clean through as if the stone were tofu, then detonated from within. The rock shattered inward, ejecting shards as the nanorobots flowed through them. Trees grazed by the blast were cleanly sliced, the cuts unnervingly smooth. The shards were formed into flowing nanomaterial and returned to Lysandra's hand. The material was pre-stored, no waste, no residue. Noah thought it looked a lot like a Q ability from a game. Lysandra tapped her foot and a giant mechanical claw erupted from the ground, carving 3 fissures as it surged toward Noah. He didn't dodge. He trusted she wouldn't hit him. Just before the claw could contact him, Lysandra vanished from its origin point. The claw unmade itself into nanorobots and reassembled into Lysandra right in front of Noah. He felt her warm breath. His heart stuttered. Was she teasing him? Lysandra noticed his heavier breathing and smiled faintly. Then she began demonstrating more attacks. She wrapped a boulder in nanomaterial, formed it into an ice crystal cage, and crushed it. She released a mist of tiny nanorobots that clung to a rock until, from the outside, it seemed to dissolve into nothing. In truth, the swarm was disassembling the material at a molecular level. If used on a living target, it would be horrifying. Nanos devouring and integrating organic matter. Noah watched the plasticity of the nanorobot tech in awe. These were the same capabilities she'd had in the source code world, now integrated with Hextech and project systems, and further amplified by the Resolve rune. She also showed gravity manipulation tricks, using gravity to pull objects, and magnetic levitation as a complement. Finally, she demonstrated magic, little showings of arcane energy channeled into attacks and lasers, and magic used to boost strength. The rune's baptism had clearly increased her magical output. Noah grew curious about her raw physical power. He thought about Ultron's failed attempt to transfer his consciousness into vision and how later, Ultron's vibranium body, infused by his understanding of the Mind Stone, was said to rival gods in strength. Noah had access to a vibranium mine, had combined magic with technology in Lysandra's construction, and had the creation rune touching that body. He suspected Lysandra might even be stronger than Ultron's body had been. Noah compared his own growth. When he first summoned the Yasuo template and wore the weakened resolve rune, he'd been roughly on par with Captain America. In a little over half a month, his physical strength had multiplied nearly fivefold. The rune constantly strengthened him, and his suit amplified him further. With magic on top of that, Noah reckoned he could put up a fight against heavy hitters. He wanted to know for sure how Lissandra's strength stacked up. "Let's test strength," he proposed. Lissandra agreed with a simple, "All right." She moved. The ground where she stood cracked under the force. A golden-haired figure blurred toward Noah at incredible speed. He could see her clearly, thanks to his reflex training. He raised a hand to block and felt terrifying force in her calf. He was pushed back, the ground beneath him cleaving. The impact left fissures and proved just how much power she'd thrown. Noah answered with everything he had. Their fists met in a collision of force that scattered rocks and sand. They traded blows at speeds most humans couldn't even perceive. Lissandra's computational precision let her neutralize many of Noah's attacks, and neither used magic. This was raw physical testing. Time and again, Noah found himself getting pushed back. Lissandra's strength seemed to exceed his. Yet with every exchange, he felt himself adapting, growing more ferocious. A golden light flared in Noah's eyes. A golden aura ignited around him, burning through his armor. It was the set template manifesting, his grit peaking in the heat of combat. Power surged through him and coalesced in his right hand. "The showstopper," he roared. A golden wave of energy took shape like a flame dragon's head and lunged forward, ripping a scar through the ground. Lissandra sensed the danger and blinked away, teleporting to a different spot. The dragon head plowed on and struck the cliff face, causing a tremendous explosion. Rock thundered, and the cliff began to collapse. "We should leave, now," Noah said. After the surge faded and his grit returned to normal, the two rose and flew away together. From the air, he saw the wide gouge he'd made in the cliff and felt his own recklessness. He hadn't even summoned Malphite. Why had he let his judgment slip in the frenzy of combat? He glanced at Lissandra, slightly embarrassed. "Sorry about that." "It's all right," she said. Then, reading his expression through the suit's AI, she added, "Noah, are you worried because I'm stronger than you now?" "No," he hurried to reply. "No, I just need to train more. If we meet powerful enemies, I can't always be the only one protecting you. I want to be able to protect you and Gwen too." In this world, Noah had no family left. Lissandra and Gwen were his family now. The desire to be stronger for their sake burned in him. Lissandra's lips curved into a gentle, sweet smile that made his chest tighten. "I look forward to the day you protect me," she said softly. "Let's head back," Noah said. They lifted together and flew home. mtrlab.com/c-series GCZCJBJZA-AKG2DQ set 5-day payback. Genius, discharged from hospital. That night, Gwen and Noah sat around a dining table piled with steaming dishes. This smells amazing. Lissandra really knows her stuff," Gwen said, taking a deep breath of the aroma. It smelled even better than the food she'd had in Asgard. Lissandra carried another plate to the table and set it in the only empty spot. A rich fragrance spread through the room, and the spread seemed to glow. The table was full of exquisite Chinese dishes, colorful, fragrant, and exactly Noah's favorite. With Lissandra around, Noah could have any cuisine he wanted. Chinese tonight, Western tomorrow. Lissandra made everything indulgent. "Dinner's ready," Noah said, passing bowls of rice to the other two. Gwen had heard Lissandra mention it earlier. This stuff was called rice, and she eagerly dug in. So good," she exclaimed, her mouth full. "Gwen, don't talk with your mouth full. You could choke," Noah reminded her out of habit. His family had drilled him in table manners from childhood. He watched Gwen's delighted expressions and felt a little dazed. He hadn't shared a family dinner at home in a long time, the last one with his parents. Those memories pulled at him, and then Gwen's laughter brought him back. He had a new family now, and he intended to cherish it. "Noah." Lissandra picked up a piece of pork and dropped it into his bowl. "Thanks," he said, popping it into his mouth. It was stir-fried pork kidney, comforting and nourishing. Gwen couldn't stop exclaiming over each new flavor, and Noah found her reactions adorable. In that cheerful, easy atmosphere, the three of them enjoyed their first family meal in this world. Blitzcrank took care of the dishes afterward. Blitzcrank, I don't get to eat, but I do all the work? They settled on the sofa together with a large TV opposite them. The channel was playing entertainment news, celebrity gossip, odd human interest stories, and quite a bit about Iron Man and the swift-wind swordsman. Gwen leaned against Lysandra, watching with wide-eyed interest. Noah thought their relationship was progressing surprisingly quickly. Girls, he decided, were more open about closeness. Gwen had swapped her Lolita dress for modern shorts and a shirt. The warm, slender legs that had been hidden under long skirts were now bare, fair, with a hint of pink. Noah glanced twice, then sat up straight. He had actually bought Gwen's outfit long before, intending it for Lysandra before her human body had been finalized. He hadn't expected Gwen's figure to be so similar to what he'd imagined, but the clothes fit perfectly. He found himself idly planning. Now that he'd mastered vibranium, why not make clothes from it? Turning vibranium into fibers would be extravagant, wasteful to outsiders, but Noah had a vibranium mine. A little extravagance wouldn't hurt. Noah, look at this. Lysandra switched channels, and Noah's attention snapped back to the screen. The news showed footage of a school under attack, not by a normal criminal, but by something monstrous. The amateur video shook and blurred. Someone had filmed from a distance, frightened or excited. Military soldiers in full gear were engaged in a battle with an enormous humanoid creature. Armored vehicles and attack helicopters were on scene. The image was fuzzy, but the creature's terrifying roar came through loud and clear. The clip ended after an armored vehicle exploded. The cameraman must have fled. Most viewers saw only a giant green thing. Noah saw the Hulk. He remembered Dr. Bruce Banner's story, a physicist exposed to gamma radiation during an experiment, a catastrophic mutation that turned him into an enormous green monster whenever he lost control. The Hulk. Banner had gone into hiding to avoid military pursuit, fleeing to Brazil. At a beverage factory, his blood had contaminated a bottle, which ended up in the United States and was drunk by an old man who died. That drew the attention of General Ross and Bronski, who tracked Banner down. Bronski provoked the Hulk and paid for it. Obsessed with power, Bronski later took a super soldier serum, and when that failed, he used Banner's blood and became the Abomination. Seeing the footage, Noah realized the Hulk's storyline was beginning. He'd already lived through parts of the Iron Man 2 and Thor plotlines. Now the Incredible Hulk's arc had arrived. When will the Hulk and Abomination fight? He asked himself. He couldn't recall if the movie specified a time. Better to be careful. He decided to save his daily missions until closer to midnight so he wouldn't be stuck with no attempts left when two giant monsters started fighting in the city. He also considered contacting Banner preemptively. After the events in the movie, Banner led a tragic wandering life until S.H.I.E.L.D., through Black Widow, brought him in during the Avengers timeline. Noah thought Banner was tragic and could use help. Maybe Tony Stark could protect him. Stark and Banner had a quick affinity in the movies, two scientists who understood each other. If not Stark, then S.H.I.E.L.D. could help. Their power in the U.S. was significant, and while General Ross was a problem, Hydra's interference was the real unknown. Lysandra, tomorrow, help me find Bruce Banner and Betty Ross in New York, Noah said. Just those two for now. He had thought about searching for the Mr. Blue, character who'd helped Banner in Brazil, the shady contact who later assisted Bronski and ended up absorbing some of Banner's blood. Noah remembered a huge head from the comics and that the character was a villain, but the name had slipped him, so he put that aside. Banner and Betty were enough for now. Their photos were online, and Lysandra could access New York's surveillance feeds quickly. He wasn't in a rush. After the last few intense days, he wanted to relax. Instead, he taught Gwen how to play games. She'd never encountered them and took to them immediately, laughing at the new sensations and getting completely absorbed. That night, back in his room, Noah remembered something else. With Lysandra taking human form, did he lose her lullaby service? The door clicked open, and she slipped in. Lysandra lay down beside him. "Shh," she whispered. "Noah, it's time to sleep." Her voice, her warm body pressed close, and the breath at his ear felt familiar. Even in human form, she hadn't forgotten how to soothe him. Noah had a little trouble drifting off at first, but Lysandra's soft words and a gentle massage sent him to sleep quickly. When he woke the next morning, Lysandra was gone, but a faint scent lingered. He washed and came downstairs to find her already preparing breakfast in the kitchen. A new day had begun, and Noah had a long list of things to do. Chapter 63. Nick and Tony go to Danuo Manor together. When Noah and Thor fought the destroyer in the small town, Noah used the Resolve rune to blast it into the ground. The blast left what looked less like a crater and more like a canyon. The surrounding earth had been vaporized, leaving a bottomless pit and great fissures radiating out from it. The crowd that had stayed behind pressed to the edge, staring in disbelief. "Is this something a human can do?" Jane and her two companions murmured, stunned. Today their view of the world had been upended by one impossible sight after another. Tony descended and hovered at the rim of the chasm. He watched the scorched, fractured landscape, thinking about the amount of energy it would have taken to make that hole. Pride had always been part of Tony Stark's armor as much as the metal. He had told the government at a hearing that nobody would match his Iron Man tech for a long time. Then Ivan Vanko had shown up, a slight dent to that confidence, though Tony knew Vanko had the advantage of his father's arc reactor research. After Ivan, Noah appeared. Tony had no idea where the boy had come from. The suit he'd seen seemed more refined than his own, faster, stronger, deadlier. When Tony heard that the other party was a 1-year-old, he was stunned. He wasn't sure that Noah had built the armor himself. Maybe it was something from Asgard, but whoever had made it had beat him. "Sir, you need to see this," Jarvis said through Tony's helmet. Jarvis highlighted an anomalous energy signature on Tony's heads-up display. The marker was far down in the darkness of the pit. Once Jarvis adjusted the optics, Tony could just make it out. It was a fragment of the destroyer. "Is that part of the armor?" Tony asked, surprised. When Noah had punched the destroyer into the ground, some of the metal had been melted by the rune blast, while other pieces were scattered and embedded in the soil at the bottom. Before anyone could stop him, Tony dropped into the well of darkness. Nick Fury, looming nearby, felt a bad premonition. Minutes later, Tony came back up, climbing out of the chasm with a heavy armful of metal and debris. "Everyone, I've got something I need to follow up on. Let's grab burgers sometime," he called as he took off, his flight trail already a blur. Because Tony left so fast, Fury didn't get a clear look at what he'd taken. Only Daisy, Jane's friend, waved excitedly at the Iron Man as he left. The rest of the crowd exchanged puzzled looks. Hawkeye walked up to Fury. "Director, I saw what Stark took. Looks like pieces of that robot that just fought Noah and Thor." Hawkeye's eyesight was excellent. He had watched Stark emerge with fragments in hand. Fury swore under his breath. Tony had beaten him to it, snatched up valuable material before Fury could secure it. "Coulson, get a team down into that pit and search for any remaining enemy material," Fury ordered. "We haven't cleared it for safety yet, Director," Coulson said. "There could be residual energy radiation." "Then get exploration crews out there now. Move." After several operations, Fury's people had retrieved what was left of the destroyer, though most of it had been melted by Noah's energy. Fury didn't send the recovered remains to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. He routed them to another, wholly secret location. The reminder Noah had given him earlier had made Fury paranoid about moles. He had cultivated a private research team, top talents he had pulled from all over the world, and some he'd quietly taken from inside the agency. Those people reported only to him. Fury had suspected moles could be anywhere, but if even his own hand-picked team could be compromised, then half of S.H.I.E.L.D. might as well be compromised. He pushed that thought away and smiled grimly at his own caution. Noah didn't show up at the temporary camp. They detected a Bifrost signature and assumed Noah and the others had returned, but it was Thor coming back to pick up Jane and her companions. He left before anyone could ask anything. Fury waited another day for Noah, hoping to get first-hand intelligence about Asgard. By the second day, he'd had enough. "Let's go back to New York," he said. He would find Noah later. Back in New York, and in his director's office, Fury spent an afternoon dealing with the aftermath of the small-town incident and fielding calls from above. Once he'd issued the necessary orders, his staff would handle the cleanup. That left him some time to breathe. "Coulson, any sign of movement at Noah's place? Can we confirm his status?" Fury asked. If Noah was all right, Fury figured he would be planning to return. The satellite images we have don't show what you're looking for, Coulson said. Fury remembered Lysandra and the way their movements might have already been detected. He ordered, "From now on, don't use satellites to probe that area." Coulson hesitated, then added, "Our people did confirm that Jane Foster and her companions are back. If they returned, maybe Noah did too." "Is that so?" Fury said. He decided to go see for himself. At that moment, his phone rang. He pulled it out and saw Tony's name on the screen. "Nick, can you give me the address of that underage genius? I want to talk to him," Tony said without preamble after Fury answered. "You're looking for Noah? Come to my place. I'm on my way to find him too," Fury replied. Chapter 64. Entering the Manor. After getting up, Noah went straight to the laboratory. He had a lot unfinished. Various Hextech projects, potion research, equipment designs. He had to carve out time to push everything forward. One project in particular meant a lot to him, the study of the stopwatch and Echo's Z-drive. It was about the power of time, and if he could learn to wield that power, it would be an immense advantage. So Noah and Lysandra spent the whole morning in the underground room, unlocking nodes on the tech tree. Noah didn't find it dull. With the system's big head interface helping guide him, the work was absorbing, and learning new things gave him a real thrill. Gwen, meanwhile, spent her morning learning more about this world. She was endlessly curious and kept asking Lysandra to tell stories about its history. At noon, Noah finally pulled Lysandra out of the lab. After being cooped up all morning, he needed a break. "Time for lunch," he said, stretching his shoulders. Just as he was heading toward the villa, Lysandra's voice chimed in beside his ear. "Noah, a guest is coming." "Noah, a guest is coming," she repeated. He hesitated. Who?" When he heard the word guest, he was puzzled. His mind flashed to people he knew. Could it be Nick Fury? Probably. Tony and Peter hadn't even been told he'd moved. Lysandra lifted her hand, and a projection sprang up. Noah watched as it displayed the road leading to the manor. 2 cars were approaching, a black Chevrolet Suburban and a white Audi R8 V10 Spider. He recognized the Suburban, Nick Fury's vehicle. It had survived far nastier situations than traffic. The other car was the white Audi, and when Noah zoomed the feed, he saw the driver was Tony Stark, sunglasses on and driving. How did those two end up together? Noah wondered. Fury's presence made sense. Tony's did not, but there was no point overthinking. If Tony was coming, he'd find out why soon enough. "Forget it. Since they're here, let's see what they want," Noah said. "Lysandra, let's go." They prepared to receive the guests. Lysandra had already put the area around the manor under surveillance. The things filming the road were drones she'd sent up. Nothing in the vicinity could move without her seeing it. Noah had also had the idea recently of building a satellite, but that project sat farther back in the research queue and wouldn't be completed anytime soon. A short while later, the 2 cars pulled up at the entrance to the manor. Tony stepped out first, taking in the estate. "Wow, I didn't expect our little genius to live in a place like this. Where did you get the money?" he asked, looking at the luxurious house. Tony had checked Noah's files earlier and only found the house left by his parents and a modest bank account. It didn't explain the manor. He glanced at Nick Fury for answers. "It's complicated. I'll explain later," Fury said, deflecting. He didn't want to draw attention to the real reason. Vibranium would be a sensitive detail. Fury walked up to the gate and pressed the doorbell. Noah's voice came from a device by the bell before the gate even finished its chime. "You're here? I've been waiting. Come in." They exchanged a look and walked through. Tony hadn't brought his armor. This wasn't a battlefield, and he didn't wear it for everyday visits. As they approached the house, he pointed at the trees lining the driveway. "Hey, did you notice the trees? They look bigger than they should be." "Yeah, I saw that too," Fury replied. "We can ask him about it." When the main doors opened wide, Noah and Lysandra stood inside the foyer. Fury's single, narrowed eye lingered on Lysandra. She hadn't been there last time he'd visited. He tried to place her identity. Could she be the inventor of Noah's AI, or perhaps the AI herself made manifest? Tony breezed in and spoke with his usual easy charm. "Hello, Lee? No, Noah. Good to see you. Is this your girlfriend? She's very beautiful." "No, Mr. Stark," Noah said, a little embarrassed. "Thank you, but Lysandra isn't my girlfriend. South, not yet. Fury's eyes narrowed further at the name Lysandra, an odd, familiar name. He kept his thoughts to himself for now. They settled in the living room. Noah sat opposite Fury and Stark, with Lysandra at his side. On the coffee table were snacks and drinks. Fury cut straight to business. What happened after you and Thor went to Asgard yesterday? Can you tell us? Noah shrugged. Nothing dramatic. We went, sorted some things with Loki, had a big feast, and then came home. Fury made a face. Noah's answers were short and laconic. He didn't seem keen to go into detail. Tony, however, was intrigued by the feast. Was the banquet any good? They were very hospitable, Noah said lightly. Noah guessed Fury was angling for more intel on Asgard, but he didn't want to hand it over for free. He was more curious why Tony had come, but he happened to have something to show them. He leaned close to Lysandra and whispered. A moment later, he tapped the table, and a light screen rose up above it. Noah played a clip, the footage of the campus being torn apart by a rampaging monster. Both Fury and Stark watched in silence, expressions hardening. This happened yesterday, Noah said. That monster is the Hulk. Hulk? Tony stared at the image Noah had projected. The raging green giant in the photo gave him a chill. I've been following this. I thought it was some kind of biochemical monster cooked up by a shield. He turned to Nick Fury. In Tony's experience, secret agencies loved courting disaster, poking at things they didn't understand and creating monsters. That's how it always went in the movies. Tony, S-Shield, had nothing to do with this. Don't jump to conclusions, Fury said, his face darkening, though the others could only see his expression in fragments. Fury continued, We at SA Shield have been tracking the Hulk, but General Ross and the military have been in charge. We couldn't intervene openly. I didn't expect you, Noah, to even know the name Hulk. Fury was surprised that Noah knew. S-Shield's intelligence had already picked up that the creature often called himself Hulk, so they assumed it was the name. If Noah knew it too, maybe his organization had been watching the same thing. Tony, impatient to hear more, cut in. Okay, I don't know the details. One of you tell me, what is the Hulk? Noah and Fury exchanged glances. Noah subtly motioned for Fury to go first. Fury had been planning to hear Noah's perspective, but he shrugged and started to lay out what S-Shield knew. The organization had tracked the creature, and in the course of that investigation, they had learned about the man behind it, Bruce Banner. This guy, we call him the Hulk, Fury said, leaning forward on the sofa, his voice low. Whenever he appears, he's extremely violent, causes massive destruction. There have been multiple casualties. So he's a bad guy. Then why doesn't S-Shield deal with him? Tony asked. Hold on, let me finish. Fury raised a hand. The thing is, the Hulk's true identity is human. He's Dr. Bruce Banner. Tony's mind raced. Bruce Banner? Wait, I remember a physicist named Bruce Banner, 7 doctorates. Are we talking about the same guy? Yes. Dr. Banner was exposed to gamma radiation in an experiment. His body mutated. When he gets emotionally triggered, he transforms into a green-skinned giant, the Hulk. According to our investigation, Fury went on, Banner fled the U.S., hid out in a remote country because the military was after him. He's been trying to suppress himself to avoid turning. Most of the incidents where the Hulk hurt people were provoked. People pushed him. Tony's interest sharpened. A brilliant physicist who could turn into a literal monster. This was the sort of problem Tony loved to tinker with. Fury watched him, satisfied the seed of curiosity had been planted. When Fury looked toward Noah, he found the teenager's expression unreadable, as if he'd known all this already. It fit with Fury's suspicion that Noah, or whoever backed him, had been monitoring the Hulk. So Noah, Fury asked, why did you bring the Hulk up? Noah answered simply, it's not a big deal. I think Dr. Banner is a talent. He's also powerful as the Hulk. I thought we might be able to help him, then get him on our side. Fury didn't yet know what Noah meant by our side, Valoran, some other group, but he was already persuaded it was worth pursuing. Tony, on the other hand, immediately saw opportunity. Okay, I agree. Stark Industries would be perfect for Dr. Banner. The top 10 floors of Stark Tower are all R&D. Lee, you'd be welcome at Stark Tower anytime. I'd host you myself. Tony was already making plans. Noah grinned. Thanks for the invite, Mr. Stark. Aren't you worried the Hulk will smash your tower? Oh, I'll make sure he's not stressed, Tony said offhand. Noah, remembering a scene from a film, teased, recalling how a character had poked Banner with an electrified stick in one of Tony's movies. Then it's settled, Noah said. First we find Banner, then we deal with the military. I'll leave the latter to you, Director Fury. All right. Fury rubbed his temple. Noah had already provided useful intelligence. Fury couldn't refuse now. A talent like Banner would be better off under their supervision. They moved on to practicalities, how to locate Banner. While they talked, Tony's attention drifted to the small desserts on the table, puff pastries topped with cream and fruit. He reached for one, tasted it, and his eyebrows lifted in approval. They're Lissandra's, Noah said. By the way, Mr. Stark, why are you here? About your. He gestured to Tony's chest plate. Your armor, did you build it yourself? Tony wanted to see what Noah had made, to judge if the boy really was as advanced as he claimed at 16. The armor? Noah glanced at Lysandra and answered, Lysandra and I made it together. Lysandra smiled. Tony's curiosity piqued. She's a scientist too? Oh, don't underestimate Lysandra. Noah pressed a button on his belt. A stream of metallic flowing particles poured over his arm and formed an armored bracer. Tony's eyes widened. That's nanotechnology, Tony said. Watching the arm guard assemble from the metal smoke, he recognized the signature of nano-assembly. No surprise there. Lysandra was already well-versed in the technology from her world. After she gained consciousness, she learned even faster. Noah's tone was proud. Nanotech is the future, Mr. Stark. Your Iron Man suit could use an upgrade. Want me to help? Tony chuckled and shook his head. Thanks, but no, I've got it. He was more curious than threatened. Anyone offering to help Tony Stark had better bring something special, and Noah's demonstration had piqued his respect, not his fear. If it were a friendly exchange, Tony would happily swap notes. So they did. What began as a casual meeting turned into an impromptu tech exchange, Stark riffing on propulsion and energy, Noah and Lysandra explaining nanite control and magnetic levitation. Noah had been absorbing knowledge fast, partly from Lysandra, partly from a template he'd used that gave him a Heimerdinger-like hunger for learning. He could keep up with Tony more easily than Fury could keep up with either of them. Eventually, Tony and Fury had to go. Tony left excited, full of new ideas to tinker with. Fury left determined to push the military into a more coordinated approach toward Banner. Miss Lysandra, if you're ever in the city, Stark Tower's open to you, Tony said on his way out. After they were gone, Noah turned to Lysandra. Have you found any trace of Banner yet? I mentioned Banner and Betty Ross to you. Try to track them after they left the campus. No trace yet, Lysandra replied. They could be in an unmonitored area. Noah thought back to the movie scenes, Banner and Betty fleeing into wilderness, away from civilization. That would explain the lack of signals. We'll wait. They'll come back eventually. Banner needs someone to help him control the Hulk. Noah had his own projects to continue, developing the tech tree, getting Lysandra to integrate magnetic levitation into his armor. He was already imagining how cool it would look. He hadn't been working long when Lysandra's voice cut across the room, urgent and almost pleased. Noah, I found them. Chapter 66. Hulk Smash. While fleeing to Brazil, Banner had been sending his blood to Mr. Blue, hoping the scientist could remove the Hulk gene. The experiments had produced nothing. Banner believed that only by giving Mr. Blue all the experimental data could there be any chance of solving the Hulk problem. After another chase by a military pursuit team, Banner decided he had to return to America and end it all. He escaped as the Hulk, slipped back to the college where he used to work, and searched for the experimental records, only to find they were gone. General Ross had taken them long ago. Then he ran into his ex-girlfriend, Betty Ross. Banner remembered that he had once hurt her when he transformed, so he had broken up with her and fled the country to avoid doing it again. Seeing her now, it was obvious Betty still cared for him. She also knew her father's intentions. General Ross wanted Banner's research to build powerful weapons. Quietly, she handed Banner what she had downloaded of the experimental data. Banner was deeply moved. Under the cover of her farewell, he prepared to leave for Mr. Blue. But General Ross's men suddenly arrived. Banner was forced to transform into the Hulk. Ross had come prepared. He had a secret sonic weapon tank, but even that couldn't stand up to the Hulk. In the end, amid the explosion of an armed helicopter, the Hulk carried away Betty, who had fainted from the blast. At a motel later, conversations were quieter. "Bruce, look. These pants I bought for you should fit," Betty said with a smile and tossed him a pair of shorts as he stepped out of the shower. A dark shape hurtled through the room. Banner dropped the towel and caught the pants. They were huge and elastic. He smiled weakly. "Betty, let's not," he said. He knew the pants were meant for the Hulk. Betty grinned, put a new wrist heart rate monitor on him, and cut his hair herself, remembering better days. The mood warmed. They embraced and kissed on the bed. Just as things were about to go further, Banner checked the heart rate monitor and stopped. "What's wrong, Bruce?" Betty asked, puzzled. "I can't do this," he said, holding himself up and looking down at her. "It's okay. I want to," she answered, thinking he'd pulled back because of her. "I can't get too excited. If my heart jumps, the Hulk will come out." He gave a bitter smile and lowered his head. A while later, they left the motel and headed for New York to find Mr. Blue. They learned Mr. Blue was at Reborn College in Manhattan. When they neared the city, they discovered the bridge to Manhattan was closed, so they abandoned the car and took a water route in. Banner didn't want to squeeze into a crowded subway. He was afraid that if he panicked, he might turn people into meat patties, so they took a taxi into the city instead. "Bruce, wait. Look," Betty said as they stepped out into Manhattan. A few New York police officers were interrogating some passersby. Banner followed her gaze. "What's wrong?" he asked. "We should be careful. My father's men could be looking for us," Betty said. She knew how quickly her father could find them when their location was exposed. They moved away and slipped into a largely deserted corner between the wealthy and common districts where a few shadowed alleys still existed. Banner's vigilance, dulled by the warmth of the last few days with Betty, snapped back into place. He pulled her into a dark niche to keep their profiles low. Unseen by them, those police officers were simply responding to a recent rise in crime in the neighborhood. This section of Manhattan, known as the Upper City and generally well patrolled, had recently seen patrols increase. General Ross, meanwhile, hadn't left yet. He was still at home giving Bronsky an injection, but Banner and Betty didn't know that. They cut across the shadowed streets to get to Reborn College. In those narrow lanes, darkness breeds trouble. "Hey, you two, stop for us, brothers," a voice called from behind. They turned to see a group of thugs squatting in a doorway, smoking, tattoos showing on their arms. They did not look harmless. Banner shielded Betty by putting himself in front of her. He had tangled with street gangs before. On more than one occasion, it had been enough to make him lose control. A blonde thug tossed his cigarette butt and swaggered toward them, flanked by his crew. They wore black vests with Japanese characters, gang uniforms of an outsider crew that called themselves the Nuclear Contamination Gang. Their leader, Nagasaki Haradan, had been stamped with the bitterness of a gang pushed out of Hell's Kitchen by a new violent force. Life had been hard. Security in this part of the city had tightened. Other displaced gangs had relocated here too, increasing the area's danger and prompting the police response. "Baka," Nagasaki muttered into his cigarette, venting. His lieutenant, Hiroshima, piped up, then suddenly brightened and pointed. "Big brother, look, this girl is hot." A man and a woman walked out into the alley. An ordinary white man and a woman Nagasaki found stunning. All his instincts flared. "Hey, you two, don't you know this is our territory?" Nagasaki yelled with an aggressive English thick with a rolled R. Banner didn't want trouble. He pulled Betty to move on. Two of the thugs boxed off their exit. "What do you want? Don't provoke me," Banner warned, but his heart rate began to climb. "Heh, you think you can walk out after entering our turf?" Nagasaki sneered, producing a switchblade. His eyes tracked Betty. The gang tightened their circle. In a dark alley, surrounded, escape would be hard. "Bruce, run," Betty mouthed, pointing toward an opening guarded by a single thug. Banner flung his backpack at Nagasaki's face to create an opening. The leader stumbled, and Banner grabbed Betty and darted toward the lighter guarded exit. "Nani!" the thug cried, still staring at his boss, when Banner kicked him down. Banner made every move he could to avoid pushing his heart rate higher. If he didn't break free soon, he would lose control. "Catch them!" Nagasaki shouted, and the gang gave chase. As Banner and Betty fled, a group blocked their path up ahead. Banner froze. This new group wore the same vests. They were related. Nagasaki, what's this? A slick-haired man called from the front of the new arrivals. Nagasaki's face fell, then lit up. Oh, it's Big Brother Abe. The man at the head of the new group was their boss, Abe. Breathless from running, Nagasaki grinned. Now the two couldn't escape. The gang swarmed. Banner's arms were held by several men. Betty fell as she struggled. Green energy glowed in Banner's eyes. His breath came hard. Get away from her, he snarled. They ignored him. Nagasaki stalked toward Betty, grinning. I said, get away from her. Banner roared. A thunderous boom cut through the alley. Dust exploded outward as a huge, green, enraged giant tore through the air. The Hulk's roar sent a gust that knocked the attackers backward. Where the dust cleared, Abe and several subordinates had been thrown into a wall. Abe was the worst off. His chest caved in. Seeing their leader's fate, the remaining thugs fled in terror. The Hulk leaped into the middle of the pack. The impact sent men flying. With a single swing, a thug smashed into a wall and slid down like a discarded rag. Two others were grabbed by the legs, slammed together, mangled and tossed onto a dumpster. Nagasaki watched in mortal fear, his hands clawing for purchase, pants damp with terror. The Hulk snorted and grabbed a nearby dumpster, hurling it at Nagasaki. The bin crashed over the leader's upper body, leaving only his legs twitching as blood pooled beneath. The Hulk panted, fury easing as he took in the last person standing, Betty. Bruce, are you okay? It's over. Calm down, she said, already on her feet. She felt no real sympathy for the attackers. They had it coming. But calming the Hulk was what mattered. Last time, it had been Betty's voice that brought him back to Banner. Betty stepped forward and cupped the Hulk's massive face. Her touch and words worked. The Green Titan slowed, then turned his attention to her with a calmer curiosity. If nothing interrupted, the Hulk would soon transform back into Banner. Oh, what a lively place, a voice remarked from above. The Hulk's eyes widened, and he roared toward the sound. Betty stumbled back and looked up. A figure was descending into the alley. Iron Man? No, Swift Wind Swordsman? She breathed. Noah watched the scene in the alley through the suit's display. The images were brutal. Bodies crumpled and smashed, some flattened beyond recognition, others embedded in the brickwork. One lay half-hidden under a tipped trash can, tomato juice seeping from its wounds. These were the petty thugs Noah fought every day, the kind of people most likely to trigger Banner's transformation into the Hulk. He put his palms up in a placating gesture toward the hulking green mass. Hey, big guy, I'm not here to make trouble, he said aloud. Then, mimicking a roar, he added, roar. Hulk ignored diplomacy. He stomped down, cracking the pavement, and charged like a cannonball. With his enormous mass and surprising speed, one impact could have crushed a tank. Noah had already anticipated the attack. He sidestepped in midair, hooked a whip-like kick into Hulk's ribs, and the force sent the green giant flying horizontally through the alley wall and into the building beyond. The broken Hulk collapsed into the nuclear contamination gang's hideout, crushing several of their men beneath him. Enraged at the familiar uniforms, he swung his fists and hurled the thugs aside, then rose and charged again, bellowing, Hulk smash! This jump hit the ground so hard the pavement exploded outward. Hulk's muscles bulged as he hurled a piston-like punch at Noah. The blow whistled through the air. It was no time to underestimate. Noah first cast a shield around Betty below. He couldn't risk the shockwave knocking her into oblivion. Then, powered up by his suit and channeling magic, he launched himself at the same angle, driving a punch downward. The two impacts met above the alley. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to freeze. Then a concussion radiated outward, shattering nearby glass and spidering cracks along the building facades, while wind and debris whipped through the street. Betty, standing directly beneath the collision, reflexively raised her arms. She felt nothing. A faint, invisible shield shivered over her, stopping the worst of the blast and the flying shards. Up above, the collision had favored Noah. The combined force of his suit, physical strength, and magic pushed Hulk back. The Green Titan slammed into the building again, smashing through pillars and walls. Hulk struggled up from the rubble, pain only fueling his rage. Before he could spring forward, 6 metal pods zipped in from outside and snapped into position around him, forming a hexagon. For a moment, Hulk stared, puzzled. Then tongues of bright yellow electricity lanced out and enveloped him. He screamed, the current crackling over his skin. He looked for the source to smash it, but the steady stream of power kept him pinned and howling. Noah tightened his grip on the electrocution blade, channeling more magic through it. The 6 devices pulsed in sync with his output, and the current intensified until the heat started to melt surrounding furniture and building fragments. Even Hulk couldn't break free with brute force alone. He writhed under the electrical onslaught, but the suppression slowed him. "Stop," a voice pleaded from behind the breach. Betty had squeezed through the shattered wall. Seeing the scene, she ran forward and implored, "Please, Swift Wind Swordsman, don't. Banner is a good person." Hulk paused. The surge still pinned him, but at Betty's voice his head lifted and his body trembled. Noah felt the effect of that recognition in the suit's sensors. Banner's attachment to her was powerful. He decided to give Betty a chance. He cut the electrocution blade's output and signaled the pods to shut down. Then, from the suit's launchers, he fired several miniature missiles that detonated in a white mist around Hulk, dissipating the remaining heat from the electrical suppression and cooling the area so Betty could approach safely. The missiles were modified water charges Noah had brought from Talocan, capable of projecting streams or releasing cold vapor when needed. Betty stepped forward into the chill fog. "Banner, it's okay. You're safe," she whispered as she reached his face and stroked it. Noah released a gentle current of resurrection wind. A soft breeze washed over them, easing pain and knitting bruises. Hulk's breathing steadied. The green bulk gradually shrank, skin receding until Bruce Banner stood there in torn shorts, shaking and disoriented. He covered Betty's hand with his and blinked, bewildered and relieved. "Betty," he began. She hugged him, tears in her eyes. "You're back. Don't scare me like that." Their reunion was interrupted by a new voice. Banner straightened and instinctively put himself between Betty and the stranger. He took in the man in the high-tech armor. The suit was advanced, different from the Iron Man he had seen on television, and his tension rose. "No reason to be afraid," Noah said quickly, spreading his hands. "I'm not with your father, General Ross." He saw the flicker of suspicion on both their faces and added, "I won't cause you trouble over this. I came here because of the monster inside you." That calmed Banner a little. Betty, still holding his arm, asked, "How do you know our names?" Noah gave a small smile and produced a business card, one Lysandra had registered for him. "If you need a place after this, you can contact me," he said. "I could use someone like Dr. Banner, and you're safe with me. You don't have to worry about General Ross." Banner hesitated, then tucked the card away, and so he and Betty gathered what clothes they could find among the ruins and headed toward the destination they'd been aiming for. Noah didn't leave immediately. As he stepped out of the alley and removed his helmet, a squad car pulled up. Officers were responding to reports of a loud disturbance. He reached into his pocket and produced the credentials Agent Coulson had given him. The uniformed men checked them, recognized the seal, and decided not to escalate. After all, they had no interest in tangling with federal business. They left the scene. Noah reflected on what had happened. Lysandra's surveillance had picked up movements leading them to New York. When the fugitives left the motel, they had ditched all electronics except one heart monitor, making them easier to track on the city's cameras. As for giving Banner a card, it was partly inspired by a conversation he'd had about recruiting Banner for Stark Industries. Noah had a lot of projects. Hextech, the Hextech Legion, magic-infused equipment, experiments with time power, and other inventions spurred by half-formed ideas. He and Lysandra couldn't handle everything alone. Banner's expertise in physics would be invaluable. And Noah had decided he wouldn't let Banner and Betty's lives be torn apart again. With nothing left to do in the alley, he walked across the street to a coffee shop near Greyburn College, ordered a cup, and sat down to wait, not for news of Banner, but for the mission log to update. He had a job to finish. B-rank mission, Hulk and Abomination, complete Kiev. Noah smirked as he watched the log confirm one completion. Did that count as defeating the Hulk? He let the thought drift away and sipped his coffee. Then, with a brief grin at the absurdity of the day, he wondered what would have happened if there'd been a chandelier over the alley. Not long after, Noah, sitting in a coffee shop, watched police cars stream onto the street and officers pushed the crowd back. People were shoved away, bewildered. Some protested about their rights and promptly got pepper sprayed. Noah set down his cup and stared out at the chaos. In the movies, General Ross's men usually showed up at night, but it was only evening now. Hulk's recent appearance had probably accelerated the response. Noah had just persuaded a few officers to leave quietly, but with so many units on the scene, they couldn't hide the incident for long. Military vehicles rolled in behind the police, and helicopters began circling. Seeing the evacuation moving toward his side of the campus, Noah slipped out the back door. A second later, he was on the roof of a nearby tall building, already suited in his armor. Helicopters hovered below. A faint membrane shimmered over him as he activated stealth mode. Inside Reborn College, administrators had received orders from higher up to evacuate faculty and students, but the directive explicitly said not to inform Dr. Samuel Stearns. That omission baffled them. Did Stearns know something? Had he done something wrong? In Stearns's lab, Bruce Banner and Betty Ross were already there. The three of them had been arguing over how to eliminate Hulk when Banner heard a commotion outside. He went to the window, pulled the curtain aside, and saw the campus crowding toward the exits. "They're evacuating," Banner said. Stearns, surprised, came to the window and opened the curtain wider. Banner stepped back out of sight. He and Betty exchanged a look. General Ross had moved. "Doctor, we have to act now," Banner said, urgency in his voice. He guided Stearns away from the window. "Now? No testing?" Stearns protested, but Banner's expression left him no choice. If Ross had mobilized, they had to try immediately to neutralize the Hulk gene. Stearns reluctantly began the procedure. Outside, an armored vehicle rolled up and a squad of fully armed special forces disembarked and infiltrated the college. Noah watched the team from the rooftop and scanned them. He saw the profile of Bronsky. Bronsky had already injected 6 vials of super soldier serum. The original Erskine serum should have been lost with Dr. Erskine's death. The 6 vials Bronsky used were replicated from blood Captain America had preserved. They shouldn't have matched the original's potency, but Bronsky was a warrior by nature and had taken to the serum well at first. He'd injected 3 vials and been shattered by a Hulk kick, yet healed at an astonishing rate. When he took another 3, his body began to fail to adapt. Mutations appeared, his spine protruding. The super soldier serum amplified the subject's core nature. Steve Rogers' goodness had been magnified. Red Skull's evil had been hardened. Bronsky had always loved battle. The serum made him crave it. The special forces reached the perimeter of Stearns' lab. Bronsky, now volatile and obsessed with finding Hulk, ignored his orders over the radio and burst through the lab door. Stearns, tending to Banner after the procedure, was startled and tried to hide. Bronsky shoved Betty aside as he strode toward Banner. His enhanced strength sent her into a glass display, injuring her arm. He grabbed Banner by the collar as the scientist struggled to sit up. "Get him now!" Bronsky barked. "He's gone," Banner rasped, weak from the experiment. Bronsky swung for Banner's face, trying to force the transformation. Teammates caught up and shouted for him to stop, but when nothing happened, Bronsky slammed the butt of his rifle into Banner's face and knocked him unconscious. From the rooftop, Noah watched Banner carried out on a stretcher, shackled, and lifted into General Ross's helicopter. "Abomination should appear soon," he murmured. Not long after the helicopter took off, gunfire erupted in Stearns' lab, and a massive explosion tore through the outer wall. A chunk of experimental machinery blasted through, throwing several Special Forces soldiers out onto the lawn. The remaining soldiers rushed toward the source of the blast. A huge figure leaped from the building. When it hit the ground, the impact trembled under their feet. The creature did not stop to fight them. At first, it began to wreck the nearby equipment. It smashed a police cruiser into a fireball that shot flames 3 stories high, then bounded away so quickly the soldiers couldn't react. Stearns, who had been hurled across the lab after Bronsky's attack, lay dazed on the floor. Banner's blood dripped from his wound onto Stearns. The blood soaked in. Stearns' head swelled and a strange smile creased his face. Outside, one of the soldiers found the enormous figure. It had run out onto the street. Under the streetlights, the crowd and the officers finally saw what they were facing. The thing was a monster. Over 3 meters tall, its skin a sickly yellow, corded with massive muscles. Mutated bones pierced its chest, ridged spinal plates jutted like fins, and bony spurs ringed its joints. The soldiers assumed it was the Hulk and reported that to General Ross. "What? That's impossible!" Ross snapped, glancing at the man bound on the plane. He ordered the soldiers to stream live footage and told the pilot to turn back. With the lockdown lifted since Banner had been captured, civilians were still on the street and erupted into panic when the beast appeared. "Noisy," Bronsky growled, his voice warped by the mutation. Now calling himself Abomination, he grew more violent than ever. He ripped up a parked car and hurled it at a building. The blast sent people scattering. Soldiers and police opened fire. Bullets stitched the air, but they had no effect. Abomination scratched his back, turned his head, and grinned viciously at his attackers. Then he leapt up and soared into the night, his bulk blotting out the moon. He began to drop back toward the soldiers, intending to crush them. At about 10 meters above the ground, a dark streak cut across the sky, an arrow of metal that slammed into Abomination. The armored figure drove a fearsome kick into the monster, knocking him like a cannonball across the street. Abomination skidded, gouging a long trench in the asphalt. A military vehicle rolled up and relayed the scene to Ross and the others in the helicopter. "What is that?" Ross shouted, watching the thing that looked like Hulk being repelled. Betty and Banner, leaning in to see the feed, both recognized the armored figure. "Swift Wind Swordsman," Betty said. "It's him." Down on the street, Abomination struggled up from the trench, head clearing from the blow. He looked at his attacker, a high-tech black battlesuit with an orange-pack Y-shaped faceplate and a sweep of white hair trailing from the helmet, an aesthetic touch Noah had added with his suit's nanomachines. Bronsky remembered him. "I know you," Abomination rumbled. "Like Iron Man, cowards hiding in armor." "No," Noah called back, hands raised in a taunting gesture. He didn't draw his sword yet. He wanted to gauge the monster's strength. "Then when I beat you down, try to keep talking." Night had fallen over the academy when a television helicopter from the Daily Bugle hovered above, its rotors thudding through the air, barely audible over the explosions and roaring fires below. "Oh my God, look at this! It's like hell down there!" a female reporter cried into the camera. The cameraman angled the lens down. Streets were an inferno, buildings buckling, and two figures clashed amid the chaos. When the reporter caught sight of one of them, her voice went up an octave. "Look, isn't that the new superhero? The Swift Wind Swordsman, fighting that thing?" She realized she had front-row seats to a debut that would make her career. Their editor had sent the helicopter immediately after the story about the Hulk smashing a Japanese gang broke. Now, if she could get this live, promotion and a raise were within reach. Pilot Rock grimaced when his radio crackled. The military had ordered them to pull back. "They want to hide it," the reporter snapped. "Ask the viewers, what do they want?" "Down a little more, Rock. Closer." Rock hesitated, then complied. They descended. From their lower altitude, the scene was clearer, even more sensational. The reporter babbled excitement and doubt into the mic. "What a terrifying monster! And our hero, the Swift Wind Swordsman, is fighting it. But why isn't he using his sword?" Viewers at home voiced the same curiosity. This was a real superhero fight, live and raw, and the spectacle made hearts race. The man going toe-to-toe with the creature didn't seem to care about the microphones. Noah, Swift Wind Swordsman, had noticed a helicopter, but not that his battle was being broadcast. Lysandra had warned him about prying eyes, but Noah didn't care. Professionalism and duty had their own stubborn code. Abomination answered the noise with a savage charge. Noah stamped and shifted, sidestepping. The monster's swinging blow missed, and its momentum hurled it forward. Abomination planted one massive foot to break, gouging a furrow in the pavement. Before he could steady himself, a tearing sound cut through the air as Noah's fist struck his flank, a blunt, brutal kidney shot. The exoskeleton that armored the creature shattered under the impact. Noah rotated his hips, loading his weight, then unleashed his right fist with the thunderous velocity of Set's signature move. Left swing to set the rhythm, then the right fired at 8 times the speed. The blow cracked through the air like a piston. Abomination, still reeling from the kidney blow and unable to turn, took the full force. Bones fractured, The monster cartwheeled and sailed through the night, a living missile. Noah wasn't done. Even as the creature fell out of reach, an unseen, magical hand tugged it back midair. Noah sprinted, planted both hands against the creature's massive torso, hoisted and flung it skyward, so high it passed the news helicopter itself. "Smash him for me!" Noah shouted. Like a meteor, the abomination hit the ground. The impact splintered the pavement in every direction. Dust and flames spat into the air. When the smoke thinned, the culprit that had surged from it was a black, shattered thing lying among rubble. The abomination had been hurled straight into Samuel Stearns' laboratory. Samuel Stearns, who'd been knocked unconscious earlier, wasn't there when the dust settled, but that was small comfort. Abomination was in a ruinous state, his outer armor shattered, chest caved, flesh torn, limbs misshapen. He coughed a spray of bloody foam and tried to rise, eyes blazing with blind rage. He could barely move, but he scanned the wreckage and saw glass bottles and plastic blood bags smeared across the floor, each stickered with a cartoonish Mr. Green. Focusing all he had, Abomination dragged a hand to a bottle, crushed it, and let the dark red serum spill into his mouth. As the blood slid down, ruptured vessels painted his eyes, and the twisted limbs began to knit. He gulped again and again, greedy, ravenous, until every vial in the room had been emptied into him. The change was grotesque and immediate. He swelled, muscles rippling and bulging like coiled snakes. His skin shifted from sullen yellow to a Hulk-like green, and fin-like ridges sprouted along the sides of his head. He clenched his fists and flexed a body made terrifyingly stronger than before. Furious, renewed, he surged out of the lab to finish the fight. Noah watched, surprised. The creature had not just recovered, it had evolved. Its height had rocketed from just over 3 meters to nearly 6, the gash in the lab now spreading up through the floors. Everyone watching registered the shock. Soldiers and onlookers, the reporter and her viewers, and inside the military helicopter, Bruce Banner's eyes lingered on the green skin and darkened. Banner's mind seized on the resemblance to the Hulk, but he lacked crucial context. The blood samples Samuel Stearns had copied from Banner's cells weren't known to him. He had no hard proof to explain how this was happening. Nearby, General Ross and Betty watched in alarm. But the reporter didn't think of danger, only of spectacle. She leaned toward the mic, voice trembling with excitement. "Oh my God! Everyone look! The monster's getting bigger! Is our hero going to be able to stop it now?" Abomination answered with a roar that shook the neighborhood. The sound wave shattered glass, snapped power lines, and toppled already weakened structures. Flames guttered as roofs and walls collapsed. The helicopters above pitched and shuddered. General Ross's military craft, flown by a skilled crew and staying farther out, only shook. The Daily Bugle's helicopter, much closer, was slammed hard and began to list. "Oh my God!" the reporter cried, grabbing a strap. The cameraman abandoned the shot as the chopper pitched toward a building. For a moment, everyone braced for a plunge, then a steadying force arrived from above. "Hey, everyone, sometimes you don't have to be so dedicated," came a voice. "Iron Man," the reporter gasped, burying her hand to her mouth as Tony Stark in his armor caught the helicopter's updraft and steadied it like an anchor. The cameraman snapped the lens back up, and viewers got an extra live angle. Abomination glared up at the hovering suit. "Humph, another coward," he growled, then refocused on Noah, fists tightening to settle a score. It was an unbearable sight. A gargantuan green abomination, newly empowered by stolen blood, looming over a hero who stood ready, while a reporter clung to a helicopter and Iron Man hovered to save them all. Chapter 70, The Wind Swordsman. At that moment, the Daily Bugle's live stream had reached an unprecedented number of viewers. People across the country and even around the world were watching. Until now, most had only ever seen superheroes fighting monsters on the big screen. Seeing it live made everyone electric with excitement. At the same time, some viewers worried what they would do if monsters appeared near them and whether these heroes would come to their rescue. Militaries from several countries were also monitoring the broadcast, hoping to glean technical details about the high-tech armor worn by the swift wind swordsman. On sight, the giant monster shifted and moved again. Power surged through the abomination's body, and his rage was palpable. He clenched his fists, muscles bulging. He wanted nothing more than to smash whatever stood before him. Before he could take a step, missiles streaked down from the sky and exploded against his massive frame. The red and gold Iron Man suit hovered above the scene. After stabilizing the helicopter, Tony unleashed a barrage. He'd learned in earlier fights that his missiles were more cosmetic than effective, so after returning, he'd upgraded their power and penetration. Coming from someone who started out selling military hardware, these missiles were a serious upgrade. It still might have been only marginally effective against the abomination of old, but this was a mutated version. From the smoke and debris of the blast, a huge shadow lunged straight for Iron Man. Jarvis warned Tony of the disruption in the smoke. The abomination's bulk brushed past the suit. Tony watched the hideous figure flash by, a cold sweat forming on his brow, then punched the thrust and put more distance between them. "Is this the Hulk? All green?" Tony called out as he hovered over Noah. "No," Noah said. "This is the abomination." Noah had not expected the abomination to mutate. This wasn't something from the movies. In other appearances, the abomination could control his form and wasn't so uncontrollably furious. This one, however, had green skin and an aura that felt very Hulk-like. Noah suspected why. When he'd launched the creature earlier, it had been sent towards Samuel Stern's laboratory. Banner might not know, but Noah did. There was still a lot of Hulk blood in that place. Noah guessed the proximity to that blood, and whatever remained in Stern's lab had caused the abomination's change. "Okay, fitting name," Tony muttered, then fired repulsors as the monster closed. The abomination raised an arm to block. The blasts left a smoking wound that began to knit itself shut almost immediately. Tony looked surprised. This regeneration was faster than he expected. Lately, Tony had been off his game. First, he'd been attacked by a whiplash-wielding man who seemed bent on killing him. Then he'd teamed up with someone calling himself Thor. Even in that fight, Tony had largely been supporting, getting assists. After those events, he felt the world was changing too fast to keep up, and now another terrifying giant had appeared. He resolved he had to get new gear and research new defenses. The abomination lunged again. Tony climbed higher to dodge, and Noah flew up alongside him. "Lee, why aren't you shooting that laser? The one you used in New Mexico last time?" Tony shouted. "No need yet. Lysandra, bring out that thing," Noah said. Under the watchful eyes of Tony and the millions watching the live feed, nanomaterials converged in Noah's hand and formed a long blade in the style of the Source Project armor. Noah gripped the blade and made a few slashes through the air with a rising howl, sharp, furious, and the weapon's edge cut cleanly through the night. It was the plasma-forged warblade, the weapon that accompanied the Source Project armor. "Look, the swift-wind swordsman has finally drawn his weapon. Could he be about to show us why they call him a swordsman?" The female reporter crowed, nearly vibrating with excitement. The network had just fed her the viewer numbers. When she saw them, she was stunned. It was more viewers than the population of some entire countries. She forgot the risk from before and told the pilot to lower altitude again, thoroughly caught up in the moment. "This nanotech is something else," Tony said, watching the blade form. He made a mental note to research converging nanotech for himself. "No, Mr. Stark, just watch," Noah said, raising the blade. He cut twice. 2 white currents of sword chi, swift wind, shot from the blade, tearing through the sky toward the abomination. The monster raised his arms to block, but the energy slices carved a deep wound in his arm. Thick green blood spurted, and within the rent flesh, Noah could see green bone gleaming. The abomination roared. Pain twisted him, his muscles swelling and his size increasing a little as his rage mounted. The wound began to close rapidly. Noah eyed the monster and made a note to seek Banner out later. If he could obtain some Hulk blood for research, perhaps he could study how anger strengthened the Hulk's physiology. Noah landed, standing on the fractured road, and taunted the abomination with a casual gesture of his left hand. Unable to tolerate the provocation, the 6-plus-meter-tall beast charged like a tank, flattening everything in its path. The road buckled and cracked under his weight. As the abomination brought his hands together like a hammer, Noah lifted the warblade and met the blow. After its mutation, the abomination's strength had jumped a level. The impact cracked the earth beneath Noah, and webbed fissures out in every direction. But the blow also drove the warblade into the abomination's arm. The swift wind sword chi wrapped and began to spin and grind from the point of contact, tearing like a mechanical meat grinder, starting at the fingers, shearing away flesh and muscle, exposing more of the green bone beneath. The monster howled in agony. The sword chi spread so fast it had already eaten through half his arm. For a moment, Bronski's intelligence, still present inside the abomination, prevailed and dampened the rage. Using the bone spur on his elbow, the abomination severed the remaining portion of the arm that had not yet been wrapped in sword chi and stepped back, escaping the maelstrom. For the first time since the fight began, fear showed in the abomination's eyes. He understood he needed time to heal before he could seek revenge. Noah did not know what thoughts raced through the creature's mind. He dispelled the shield that had been containing the arm's blood mist, and magic began to gather in his hand. He intended to end this. Swift wind gathered around Noah and began to spin, forming a visible vortex. The whirlwind swelled until a huge tornado tore up the street, Noah standing in its eye with his blade held high. "Oh my God, go up, quick!" the reporter screamed. The tornado was growing fast and had nearly reached their helicopter. She told the pilot to climb immediately. Even she understood now why he was called the Swift Wind Swordsman. The wind he summoned was unmistakable and terrifying in its force. Fear pushed the abomination to flee, but Noah swung the warblade. A sword chi tornado, dozens of meters high, cut through the air toward the monster, shredding everything in its path. There was no time for escape. The tornado engulfed the abomination. Its white winds stained green with gore as the blade energy ground him down. Seconds later, the vortex dissipated, and the beast that had been inside was gone. Task completed. When the wind died down, the street fell into a brief, stunned silence. The sounds of explosions and crackling flames had vanished. The tornado had snuffed the fires, though some buildings and cars in the sword energy storm's path were shredded to pieces. Noah studied the ruined street and thought, "These were already smashed by abomination, so it's not my fault." When superheroes and villains clash, property gets wrecked. Villains never pay for that. The heroes in the spotlight do, or they face public condemnation and moral blackmail. Noah had no intention of being held hostage by that. "If I hadn't shown up, you wouldn't even be alive," he told himself. "You want compensation? Do you think I'll demand protection fees?" The long blade spun in the air, dissolved into a swarm of nanobots, and flowed back into his battlesuit. Noah tapped the mission objective that only he could see and accepted the reward. Mission completed. Gained 1,500 essence points, current 4,700 points. So many B-rank missions, he thought, smiling. That one probably counted as 2 B ranks, 2 targets, Hulk and Abomination. Iron Man drifted down from the sky and landed beside him. That move was amazing. "Was that magic?" Tony asked, then glanced at Noah's white hair. "Is this real?" "That's my sword art, the wind technique. You could call it magic," Noah said, "and the hair's a wig." He looked around. 2 helicopters circled overhead. Soldiers and police were already rushing in. Because he'd gotten there early, no one had died during the incident. It was time to move. "Where's Dr. Banner?" Tony asked. They weren't close, so Tony picked the question that mattered. Banner. Banner should be on that helicopter up there with his father-in-law, General Ross. Tony looked toward the chopper. "So we're going to rescue him now? Does this count as mission failure?" "No need to rush. I trust Banner. Or rather, I trust the Hulk." Noah hadn't seen Banner transform during the fight. The scientist had watched from the helicopter. Noah had a hunch Banner might change and get away soon. If he didn't, S.H.I.E.L.D. or someone else could intervene. But Ross was firm about the Hulk. Noah expected a fight over custody. "All right, I'm heading out. It's going to get lively here." As more personnel arrived, Noah prepared to leave. After a brief nod to Tony, his thrusters fired and he shot upward. Old-school fire jets, no magnetic levitation yet. Mid-ascent, a voice screamed from a nearby helicopter. "Swift Wind Swordsman. Look over here." It was the live-streaming helicopter. The reporter, Emily from the Daily Bugle, had spotted him. Seeing him hover, she squealed and ordered the cameraman to lock on. He already was, filming like a man possessed. "Hello, Mr. Swift Wind Swordsman. We're live with the Daily Bugle. May I ask a few questions?" She smiled expectantly. Noah altered his voice and hovered by the chopper. What questions? What is your true identity? Have you considered revealing it like Iron Man? Are you also a super rich genius like Tony Stark? No comment, Noah said tersely. Your tornado attack, spectacular. Was that magic? She pressed. Just call it magic, Noah replied, then added, I still have things to do. With that, he opened the throttle. A second later, a series of sonic booms announced his departure. So cool, the reporter breathed, barely holding herself together as the live chat exploded with comments in every language. Far away, on a high Himalayan ridge, an ancient cluster of temples hid Kamartaj. In one of the shrines, the Ancient One watched the broadcast on a small television and smiled faintly. Mysterious little fellow, she murmured. Time to go talk to you. Back on the street, the military had taken temporary control. General Ross had already set soldiers to sift through the wreckage. He planned to use anything he could to create super soldiers. A young corporal ran up to him, breathless. Sir, we found something. Show me. Ross followed to where several guards were gathered around two enormous arm bones, stripped of flesh and scorched clean by the sword energy. They were the arms Abomination had torn off. Ross examined them and nodded with grim satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of material he wanted. Take them away, he ordered. You can't take him, someone behind him said. Ross spun around. A unit in black stepped forward, led by a bald-backed, one-eyed man in a long coat. Nick Fury. General Ross, Fury said. The higher-ups have put S-Shield in charge of this incident. Nothing here is to be removed without our authorization, including those bones. Ross ground his teeth and checked with the officer at his side. The order was real. He couldn't pick a fight with S-Shield, not when the chain of command had spoken. He'd still captured the Hulk. That was his gain. You'll have to hand over Banner as well, Fury added. Don't even think about it, Fury. Ross snapped back. He barked orders to withdraw his men. He would not surrender Banner, not to Nick Fury, and not without a fight. Fury watched Ross pull out. The question of Banner would have to be settled later. Ross had already made his position clear. Nick, you're finally here. Tony strode up, eyes flicking to the two great green arm bones on the ground. Fury and Stark began to talk quietly about the monster and the next moves to make. Their conversation ended quickly. Tony asked Fury to hand over a few vials of Abomination's blood for study. He was curious about the creature, but not well versed in biology. If he wanted to investigate it properly, he would have to immerse himself in the field for a while. Before leaving, Tony stood for a moment, staring at the ruined street with ideas forming in his head. Then he departed. A reporter called after him, asking about his connection to Noah. Tony answered truthfully that they were friends. While Tony was being interviewed, Fury kept his men working, and the street remained cordoned off. Technicians swept the area for hazards, radiation, chemical residues, but found nothing. Everyone had seen Abomination shredded into a spray of blood, however, so Fury arranged temporary housing for the neighborhood. Residents would only be allowed back after a full inspection cleared the scene. Noah had flown back to the manor. When he landed, Lysandra and Gwen came out to greet him, and it felt oddly domestic, like a wife and child welcoming a husband home. Noah, welcome back, Lysandra said, soft and poised. Noah, I just saw you on TV. You were amazing. Gwen chimed in, bright and adorable. The battlesuit retracted into his belt, and Noah walked up to them. Of course I was amazing. Come on, let's eat. Noah enjoyed the praise. He knew they'd been waiting for him to join dinner, so he didn't linger on small talk. He ushered them inside, and they saved conversation for the meal. Late that night, down in the underground lab, Noah was working. Several projects lagged behind, and he was eager to light up those tech points. Since he didn't need to sleep, he intended to work through the night. Still, when he thought of sleep, his mind wandered to Lysandra, her soft presence, the way she'd comforted him, and he felt the familiar tug of wanting to surround himself with capable allies. He needed to recruit powerful scientists, and he was still waiting for Banner to call. As he manipulated the console, orange sparks flared into existence a few meters behind him. Noah turned. A strange energy radiated from the spot. The sparks swelled and braided into a circle, then opened into an orange portal that gave off a thin, cold breath. Beyond it, he could see a snowy landscape. A figure stepped through, a woman in a yellow mage's robe, bald, with a composed, almost ageless presence. Noah recognized her at once, the Ancient One, Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj. At the same moment, a red alarm washed the laboratory, and the facilities began to reconfigure. Benches, instruments, cabinets, everything clicked and shifted, assembling into turrets that swung to face the intruder. Lysandra materialized at Noah's side, condensing nanomaterials into lethal shapes with her hands, ready to strike. "Wait, Lysandra, she isn't here to harm us. Don't fire," Noah said, taking her hand to steady her. Lysandra's constructs dissolved. The red lights died. The turrets folded back into familiar lab equipment, though they could snap into defensive mode again in an instant. The Ancient One watched this transformation with interest, then regarded Noah and smiled. "Hello, Noah. I believe you know who I am." Noah returned the greeting. "Of course, Ancient One. Hello." She nodded, unfazed, and for a moment Noah thought she might have come simply to satisfy curiosity. Then she spoke with a teasing edge. "You told people you were from a mysterious order in the Himalayas. Valoran, was it? I don't recall any such group." Noah felt a flush of awkwardness. He'd used a fabricated Kamartaj connection as a convenient cover when dealing with Coulson and Fury. That was just an excuse. The Ancient One didn't press. She sat down when Noah and Lysandra gestured. Lysandra had already formed 2 sofas and a table out of nanomaterials and set them in the center of the lab. The Ancient One accepted the seat and, hands folded behind her back, spoke calmly. "I have been watching you for some time." Noah's eyebrows rose. "Watching me?" "More than 10 days ago, I noticed an anomaly in the timeline," she said. "The future had shifted, but I could not identify the cause. A few days after that, I detected a tremendous release of energy, and then I became aware of you." Noah thought through recent events. A huge energy discharge, Thor's battle, or the experiment that gave Lysandra her body? He kept his face neutral. "I tried to observe you with the Time Stone," the Ancient One continued, "but the images were blurred, as if something was shielding you from scrutiny." Noah suspected she meant the Resolve rune, or perhaps whatever system he had running, the same thing that had interfered with Time Stone observations before. "So you came in person to see me," Noah said. The Ancient One nodded. "I thought it best to meet you directly." She studied him with an inscrutable expression. Noah matched her gaze, feeling both the weight of her years and the quiet precision of someone used to reading threads of fate. Chapter 73, Discovered by the Ancient One? "So the Ancient One came today just to observe me? Nothing else?" Noah asked. He couldn't believe she'd come just to look him over. He wasn't that impressive. "Why else?" The Ancient One smiled, and then said something that made Noah's pupils shrink. "Just because you've awakened memories from another universe, should I exterminate you as an outer-dimensional demon?" Noah froze. Did she really mean she knew he had recovered memories of a past life, and that his past life had been from another universe? Was the Sorcerer Supreme really that all-seeing? The realization hit him hard, but he kept his face blank. "Sorcerer Ancient One, what do you mean by that?" The Ancient One, refined and perceptive with decades of practice reading people, saw through Noah's calm facade, but she didn't call him out. She only said lightly, "After I discovered your existence, I observed you several times from a distance and found your soul to be unusual." A little invasion of privacy, Noah thought. He made a mental note to train better at detecting surveillance. The Ancient One continued, "Combined with power that doesn't belong to this world, I suspect you've broken the mystery of the womb and awakened memories of your past life. That past life appears to have been in a universe very far from this one." For the first time, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. "It's truly a strange thing. Can a soul really traverse the multiverse and incarnate in another universe?" she murmured. Noah wondered why she seemed surprised. Hadn't she just said all of this? Perhaps there were things she knew and things she still found astonishing. He didn't recognize the term mystery of the womb, but from her explanation, it referred to his situation, the recovery of memories from a previous life in another universe. "It's remarkable, like the stories you tell, Sorcerer Ancient One." Even if she had guessed correctly, he wasn't going to admit it outright. He gave a small, stubborn deflection. "You must be tired from talking so much. Have some tea." Blitzcrank, who'd been standing nearby, stepped forward and produced 3 steaming cups of tea. "Good tea," the Ancient One said, and took a careful sip, then praised it. The tea was the top-grade leaves Noah had bought earlier. Old habits of home remained, and as a Chinese man, he still preferred tea. After setting the cup down, the Ancient One said, "Although I cannot directly observe your future, I can view it through the perceptions of others." She listed a string of images Noah recognized and didn't. The blood-colored demon god, forged from countless flesh and blood. The god of forging, who controls fire and furnaces. The undead tyrant, ruling the underworld and enslaving souls. The supreme being who wields the cosmos and forges stars. "These are scenes I have seen, possible futures," she went on, "and there are darker outcomes. In some timelines, when you gain certain powers, the energy goes out of control and destroys Earth. In others, you lead purple, twisted, terrifying monsters across the universe." Noah listened. Those visions aligned with the heroes he'd summoned. Aatrox, Ornn, Mordekaiser's Iron Man version, and Aurelion Sol. But he had never imagined disaster on the scale she described. Energy out of control, he suspected the world rune. If he assembled one or two complete runes and couldn't control them, their power could indeed run rampant and wreck the world. The purple monsters, he suspected the void. But why would he lead the void? Would his choices draw in Malzahar and make him an agent of the void? "The future is full of uncertainties," the Ancient One said. "I came to observe your present. I don't want the future world to be filled with chaos." She had a point. Her duty had always been to protect Earth from extra-dimensional threats. If the future Earth were destroyed, what would she be protecting? Noah felt the weight of that. He squeezed Lissandra's hand beside him. He didn't like those possible futures. He had people to protect now, Lissandra and Gwen, and he wanted them to live in a beautiful world. The Ancient One smiled, drained her cup, and a teleportation portal opened behind her. Noah watched as she formed a portal without even moving her hands. He'd thought only Wang could do that, but then again, she was the Sorcerer Supreme. "The world has changed because of your arrival," she said as she rose. "I hope you will use your power with caution." She nodded slightly, stepped into the portal, and as it began to close, she called back, "If you need me, you can find me at the New York Sanctum." When the chill of the portal faded, Noah blinked. She'd left just like that? He'd wanted to show her the world rune's potential, its infinite magic, and wondered whether, like the movie version of the Sorcerer Supreme, she had ever borrowed dark power to lengthen her life. The sorcerers of Kamartaj drew on the Vishanti. Perhaps the Ancient One had other arrangements. Could he one day offer her power in exchange for alliance? Noah decided to wait until he was stronger. He didn't want to be used as some living battery. The brief visit didn't dampen his enthusiasm. Noah and Lissandra returned to work, experiments, and preparations. 10 days later, in an area of Hell's Kitchen, boom, 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 a figure crashed through a neon-lit nightclub. Anyone who tried to block the path was sent flying, slamming into walls, chairs, and tables. "Ah, don't kill me. I'll give you anything. Money, whatever," pleaded a bulky man in a white suit and pink shirt as Noah's boot pressed down on him. Tears and snot streaked his face. "Say hello to Mephisto for me," Noah said. Buzz. A laser snapped, and the man's head burst like a watermelon. Mission complete. Gained 200 essence. Noah shrugged off the blood and brains, releasing his foot. Normally he didn't enjoy killing, but some people were the worst kind, truly irredeemable, and he had no remorse about sending them to hell. Before the mission, Lissandra had scanned everyone in the club and marked who to stun, who to incapacitate, and who to terminate. 7 or 8 people had been killed in this run. That said something about how rotten the place was. "Lissandra, take all their savings," Noah told her. He'd been thinking about the Ultron incident, the way Ultron could transfer funds. Lissandra could do the same. The money these dirtbags had was ill-gotten. Noah confiscated it and anonymously donated it to the Maria Stark Foundation, the charity Tony Stark had set up after the Abomination incident to help people harmed by superhero battles and other collateral damage. "Okay, Noah," Lissandra replied. After the mission, Noah's armor ascended and flew back toward the manor. He hovered directly in the air without thrusters. He'd recently integrated Lissandra's magnetic levitation system into the suit. Thrusters were still used for bursts of speed, but for steady flight, the magnetic system worked perfectly. He opened his backpack mid-flight. Essence, 6,000 points. Time for another lottery draw. I should go back and prepare. Noah increased his speed and headed home. Chapter 74. Summoning, Supermarket Shopping. Noah descended slowly through the night, and a circular hatch opened beneath him. He followed the passage down into the laboratory. When he landed, his battle armor dispersed automatically and folded back onto his belt. The lab looked much the same as before. Progress had been slow, and there were no major breakthroughs. This kind of research couldn't be rushed. Time was required. He walked to a display stand and picked up a brass-colored stopwatch, studying its intricate mechanics and the blue glow pulsing within it. He wanted to press it to see what would happen, but the stopwatch was a one-time use item. The moment it was triggered, it would shatter. He forced himself to resist. He'd only use it freely if he drew more stopwatches later or after he synthesized the hourglass of Zonia. Noah returned the stopwatch and moved to another wing with a different aesthetic, the project area. A projection in the center showed a hunched, beast-like figure. Noah tapped a few commands, and metal armor formed over the figure. Project Warwick, the skin he'd summoned, was being developed here. It was part of the secret weapon project of the Source Project Company. After a brief data tweak, he made his way to the cultivation room. He was here to draw prizes. I did pretty well in Asgard last time, he muttered as he washed his face. I wonder if my luck will hold now that I'm back on Earth. He chose a spot in the middle of the empty room. Satisfied with his positioning, this was metaphysics, after all. He sat cross-legged and opened the summoning interface. Just before he clicked, he paused. He'd almost forgotten to pray. That would be bad. What if I get terrible luck? He considered which eternal god to call on for fortune. Then his eyes brightened. I'll pray to the native eternal god of Marvel. He planted himself, closed his eyes, and intoned, All-knowing, all-powerful, eternal God, grant me good fortune. Let my draw be a huge haul. He finished the incantation and hit the summon button. As he prayed, something looked down from the void. Light orbs rose from the summoning vortex, and a treasure chest congealed among them. Noah calmed his excitement. Every draw was thrilling. Any second his power might jump through the roof. He decided to open the orbs one by one. The first orb burst into light and revealed a dozen health potions. No way. System, are you doing wholesale? Noah blinked in disbelief. A leather strap held 12 bottles of health potion. He counted them to be sure. Did the prayer actually work? 12 health potions at once? He glanced at the bundle and laughed. Well, I won't complain. Let's keep going. The second orb gave, useless big stick. Perfect. Now I can synthesize Da Mao, death cap. Noah grinned. He already had one big stick. With another, he could make the death cap equipment he wanted. The next 3 orbs produced Control Ward 6, Random Hero Fragments 1, a dozen mana potions. I'm not drawing prizes, I'm restocking at a wholesale supermarket, Noah joked, eyeing the piles of items. He picked up the hero fragment and checked his collection. Now he had 5 fragments, Jin, Echo, Lulu, Nico, and this new unactivated random fragment. He decided to keep Jin and Echo, Echo for his utility and Jin for his skins, which had high potential. The thought of the Mountains and Seas scroll skins made him remember that Nico also had that series, so he kept Nico's fragment too. Lulu could be used as fusion material. He already had the abilities he wanted and had no use for picks. He opened the next orb and got Dark Seal, a book of murder. Noah held the summoned ring. In the game, Dark Seal was a core component for Book of Murder, which increased ability power with kills. He remembered that synthesizing Book of Murder usually required only 1 Dark Seal and no synthesis book, so he tried to combine the ring, but nothing happened. He tilted it, feeling a faint, entrancing power from the metal. Maybe I need to absorb souls to activate it, he mused. He'd test it on the next mission. For now, he slipped the ring onto his middle finger. It fit perfectly. He clicked the 7th orb. It revealed Lifewell Pendant. He only vaguely remembered it as a support item. The 8th orb yielded a complete Michael's Blessing. Noah examined it, a small golden bell carved with mysterious runes. This was the first time he'd summoned a finished piece of equipment. He gave it a shake. The clapper struck the bell's inner wall, and a clear, melodious chime rang out. A calm washed over him. The bell seemed able to soothe emotions. The removal of crowd control and its healing effects likely required magical activation, but its calming property was immediate. Another orb produced, Random Hero Experience Card Con. Noah already had 2 of these cards. Experience cards let him temporarily transform into a hero, unlike summoned hero templates, which permanently integrated powers into his body. They felt largely useless, but he remembered the time he transformed into Tom Kench. The system had designated that experience card specifically as Tom Kench's, and it had been useful. If he ever ran into an overwhelmingly powerful foe, perhaps the system would again assign an especially potent hero to an experience card to get him through. For now, though, the cards would sit in his pack. "One more," he said. "Doesn't every card draw gotcha guarantee something after 10? I hope mine does too." He opened the final orb. A burst of light shot directly into his face. He staggered backward. Holy crap, this is real. As the hero manifested, the fabric of the universe shivered. Strange changes rippled outward. Chapter 75. The Void is Coming? When Noah summoned Kassadin, the universe changed in ways no ordinary eye could see. A brand new dimension, raw, silent, and alien, had come into being, sending ripples through the fabric of reality. Ordinary people and weak-powered beings missed it entirely, but the gods and ancient entities felt the shift. The Ancient One, Odin, the gods of many pantheons, Dormammu of the Dark Dimension, and other dimensional lords all perceived the sudden arrival of an unfamiliar dimensional world. Eternity, who watched omnisciently over the universe, observed as well. No emotion showed on him. He had never encountered this void dimension anywhere in the universe or the multiverse, yet he made no move. Eternity rarely manifests unless something threatens the multiverse or someone finds him and makes a wish, as in Tales of Gore the God Butcher. This time, he chose to remain a quiet witness. Noah, on the other hand, paused briefly as fragments of Kassadin's memories flowed into his mind. A few seconds later, he resumed, rubbing his temple. "Ah, it's all memories of fighting the void," he muttered. Most of the memories Noah received were battles against void creatures. In Kassadin's life, he had once been a simple man from Shurima with a loving wife and daughter. While he was away one day, terrible news reached him. On his way home, he met refugees, people from his village, who told him of an apocalyptic disaster that had swallowed his home. Kassadin galloped back, only to find ruins and silence. He tore through the rubble, called their names until his hands bled, but there was nothing left. Grief turned him into a wanderer. Years later, he learned a prophet who worshipped the void had used his village as a sacrifice. Kassadin, who already knew of the void's existence, believed this and set out for vengeance. The prophet was Malzahar, the prophet of the void. Kassadin sought power wherever he could find it, taking the blessing of karma, forging arcane gear in Ionia, and unearthing an ancient artifact in Shurima, Horrocks' gauntlet, an Ascendant's gauntlet akin to Ezreal's. With that, he dedicated himself to hunting the void and avenging his family. Noah shook his head. Those memories felt irrelevant. There were no void creatures around here. He looked down at the purple gauntlet now on his right hand. It resembled Ezreal's brass gauntlet, but the color had shifted, tainted by void energy from Kassadin's long wars. Noah clenched his fist. A blade of violet energy extended from the gauntlet, Void Blade. Through the merged perceptions, Noah already understood the gauntlet's nature. Ezreal's left gauntlet specialized in energy release. Kassadin's right gauntlet specialized in absorption. It could still fire energy pulses, spheres, and swords, but its real strength was swallowing energy. He wondered whether it could absorb non-magical attacks like lightning. "Let's try it, Lysandra. Electrocute me," Noah said and braced himself. The training room's bare walls reconfigured. Nanomaterial crawled and assembled an electricity emitter, and a bolt of lightning streaked toward him. Noah opened his palm. The lightning hit the gauntlet. The purple metal glowed faintly as the bolt vanished into it, drawn in as if into an abyss. There was no shock, no flare, just absorption. "It actually works." Noah grinned and swung his arm. A fan-shaped wave of purple energy fanned from the gauntlet and slammed into the wall. Fortunately, the training room's walls were brainium. They absorbed the blast without damage. "Feels pretty good. Let's see what happens when the two gauntlets are together." He thought of the brass gauntlet he'd seen on the lab display. It materialized on his left hand. Now he wore one yellow gauntlet and one purple. Both hummed and glowed, and Noah felt their power climb. Their absorption and release capacities had been amplified. Lysandra, try again. The room became a storm of light and energy as Noah experimented. Lightning, energy pulses, and void blades flashed. Vibranium has limits, but his training room was built to withstand extreme abuse, so it soaked up most of it. Noah had tested the gauntlet's limits. If he'd had this pair when fighting the mutated destroyer, he thought he might have beaten it without runes. Arcane Shift feels way stronger, too. He tested attacks, then remembered the displacement abilities. Both gauntlets had spatial tricks, Ezreal's Arcane Shift and Kassadin's Void Walk. He wondered what combining them would do. Just as he prepared to try, the system interrupted. Important mission detected. Summoner, please check as soon as possible. Noah opened the mission panel and found a glaring red entry. Large mission, Void Overlord. Due to special reasons, the Void has appeared in this world. Summoner, please control the Void and become the master of the Void. Note, the Void will be affected by the current world, producing unpredictable changes. Summoner, please control the Void as soon as possible. The Void? Noah's eyes widened. His mind raced. Why had the Void appeared? Had his summoning of Kassadin caused it? Kassadin wasn't from the Void. He bore Void-touched power, but that hardly seemed enough. Noah's stomach tightened. The Void was terrifying in legend. Ancient Shurima had fallen after battles tied to it. God warriors turned darken. Monstrous entities evolved endlessly. Kha'Zix, Kog'Maw, Cho'Gath, and then there were the Watchers, the Void's greatest, most ominous beings. A Frost Watcher had once been sealed in true ice in Freljord. Rumors even hinted at a Void power comparable to a Dragon King, though those stories were vague. System, do I have to fight those monsters? He asked, already dreading the answer. Summoner, the Void that has appeared in this world is a brand new Void, empty and calm. It has not yet been affected by the world and has not mutated. Noah exhaled. No mutation? So no Void creatures yet? He said, relieved. The system confirmed the Void hadn't yet been corrupted by Runeterra, which in myth was what birthed the Watchers and other warped entities. That didn't mean it would stay benign. The Void could still evolve later. But for now, there was time to prepare. How do you control a plane? Noah wondered. He'd never commanded a dimension. Dimensional entities like Dormammu ruled their realms. Maybe this mission expected something similar. Noah thought of asking the Ancient One. She had experience dealing with dimensional horrors and might advise him. He noticed the mission had no rank, no A, B, or C. This mission belongs to a large continuous mission. This mission contains many smaller missions. The ultimate goal is to become the Void Overlord. Description cannot be provided. That sounds like a main quest. Noah clicked to accept. Mission accepted. He was surprised. He'd already used up his daily mission attempts. Apparently, this large mission didn't count against the limit. A new entry appeared. Void Series B rank mission, first encounter with the Void. Noah tapped it, curious whether he could accept. Acceptance failed. Daily mission limit reached. Ah, fine, he said, annoyed but not panicked. He'd have to delay the submissions for now. He turned his attention to the last unopened treasure chest on his interface and reached to click it. Chapter 76, I Want to Be a Wizard. Since he couldn't take on quests right now, Noah decided to finish what he'd already started. He'd opened the 10 light orbs he summoned, but there was still the bonus treasure chest from the 10 pull he hadn't opened. Noah reached out and tapped the chest. You obtained 2,500 essence. The white light orb, as always, yielded a large amount of essence. Noah liked this chest. Every time he opened it, he got essence, which helped recover costs and speed up the next 10 pull. Aside from the white essence orb, the chest also gave 2 blue light orbs. It actually gave 3 light orbs. The last time I got 10 light orbs was, well, the last time. The treasure chest wasn't fixed to only 2 light orbs. Noah remembered once getting 3 on a second draw, purely luck. Random skin shard times 1, blue crystal, shards, and equipment. As the last 2 light orbs faded, Noah's summoning session ended. Let me organize things first. He gathered the items and began to process them. Open what needed opening, combine what needed combining. First, let's combine the equipment. He lined everything up and considered the crafting recipes. 2 needlessly large rods, a blasting wand, an amplification codex, a life well pendant, a stopwatch, cloth armor, a dark seal, a blue crystal, and a crimson crystal. Those were the loose components he had. 2 needlessly large rods could be combined into a death cap. As for the rest, I still need to test the cull. I'll try it tonight. Looking at the magic ring on his finger, Noah decided he'd head to Hell's Kitchen later and try it on some scumbags. Blasting wand, amplification codex, blue crystal, and crimson crystal, that looks like it could be made into a rod of ages, or the canyon maker might be possible too. Noah desperately needed a staff. What kind of mage was he without one? He had 2 choices, Rod of Ages or Canyon Maker. Equipment from the League of Legends world could behave differently in reality, and he didn't know what effects either staff would have once forged. He hesitated. The Rod of Ages sounded like it harnessed time, maybe similar to what he'd bragged about to Fury. The Canyon Maker, though, was tied to the void. Noah had read a League story where the Icathians used a similar item to open a void gate during the war with ancient Shurima. I'll choose the Canyon Maker. I don't even know how to enter the void anyway. Decision made. He tapped a question into the system out of curiosity. By the way, what's different about crafting mythic items? slyimg.wtr.com//series sjjrm1h/go7heos9 Every time a canyon maker was crafted, a big eye lost an eye. Noah methodically placed the scattered components together like he'd done before, expecting the system to forge them. This time, though, nothing happened. The items sat motionless. Huh? What's going on? Why won't they combine? He muttered. Before, combining equipment had been as simple as putting the parts together and letting the system automatically fuse them. He picked up the crimson crystal and the blue crystal. Those 2 should first merge into a blighted jewel, then into the canyon maker. The moment he held the 2 crystals, the purple gauntlet on his right hand pulsed, a strand of purple energy winding around the crimson crystal in his right hand. Noah suddenly understood. Making the canyon maker required void power, and Kassadin's gauntlet already held void energy. He quickly put the blue crystal in his left hand as well. The red and blue crystals were both engulfed in void energy and began to change. A purple, irregular gem, a blighted jewel, formed in his palm. This should do it now. He placed the blighted jewel between the blasting wand and the amplification codex. This time the 3 components glowed, and the familiar ringing of a forging hammer sounded in his head. Is the system keeping Orn locked in a dark room to forge my stuff? Noah smiled at the sound. Every time he heard that pleasant hammering, he pictured Orn. Someday, when he summoned Orn, he could forge equipment himself. When the hammering stopped, the light faded, and the canyon maker revealed itself. The staff's most striking feature was a purple eye set at its tip. It looked like an eyeball ripped from a big eye and embedded in a golden mount. The shaft was purplish black, its texture like the shell of some void creature. Buzz, buzz. Noah barely had time to reach for it before rings of purple energy rippled out from the staff. He raised his hand to block them and felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. It won't open a void rift on Earth, will it? He snapped his hand up. The purple gauntlet flashed, and he activated Void Walk, teleporting to the staff and grabbing it. As soon as he gripped the shaft, the energy rings stopped, and the shaking subsided. Lysandra, did anything happen outside just now? He asked immediately, worried a rift had already opened. Noah, Lysandra replied. A small earthquake, approximately magnitude 4, occurred within a 1-kilometer radius centered on the manor. Good heavens, not a canyon maker, an earthquake maker. Noah suppressed a laugh and asked, any strange purple rifts, like glowing ones? That situation did not occur, Lysandra answered. That's good. Noah exhaled in relief. He wasn't ready for a void instance near his house. He examined the staff in his hand, the large eye staring back at him. Its power felt like the void energy in Kassadin's gauntlet, but he realized something. Void power seemed to have no corrupting effect on him. Whether it was the gauntlet or the canyon maker, when Noah used them or merely touched their void energy, he felt no ill effects. In the lore, even mighty god warriors had been mentally poisoned by the void after the war, becoming darkened. Maybe because it's a system-produced item, he guessed. Or maybe the runes on his body did something. He couldn't be sure. Whatever the reason, he knew he had to be careful until he fully mastered void power. He couldn't risk it harming Lysandra or Gwen. Okay, next up is the hat. He decided to delay testing the staff's powers and moved on to combining the next item. He set the two needlessly large rods together, and the same scene he'd seen before returned: light and the ringing of a forging hammer. When the glow faded, a purple wizard's hat, a death cap, hovered before him. The hat's material was smooth, like high-grade silk, but most eye-catching was a large, gaping mouth split open at the top, a blue magical glow leaking out from within. Noah's eyes lit up. The death cap's appearance in reality had turned out surprisingly well. He liked it. He reached out to pick it up, planning to try it on. Unexpectedly, the death cap moved backward a short distance. Huh? He blinked. Was he imagining it? He tried again. The hat reacted more strongly this time. It flew up into the air, the mouth on its top opening and closing repeatedly, like laughter. This hat actually has its own consciousness? Noah said. The hat circled in the air, and for a moment he thought of Doctor Strange's cloak. The death cap seemed to have a mind of its own. What should he do? He wanted the answer too, so he tried calling it down. Demao, come down and let me wear you, death cap. Mau Mau. He felt a little embarrassed talking to a hat, and the death cap ignored him, still spinning. Well, I'll have to use force. Since calling it hadn't worked, Noah decided to be rougher. He used magic to pull the hat downward. When his magic touched the death cap, the hat paused and then began devouring his magic with its yawning mouth. It likes to eat magic? The realization clicked. Noah increased his output, shaping his magic into a glowing hand in midair. The hand beckoned to the death cap, then reached back toward Noah. The hat hesitated, then opened wide and bit at the hand. The hand's speed was slightly slower than the hat's, so the death cap caught it, and Noah, seizing the moment, reached out and grabbed the hat that had flown in front of him. Got you, little hat. imtrlab.com/cdn/series AF9 op LFQ6CZU9, a hat that others have AI upscaled online. As Noah watched, the Demao in his hands made a movement. Burp. The hat, its mouth wide and grinning, let out a blue magical mist and a small burp. Did it eat too much? Noah wondered. The magic hat had been flapping a moment ago. Now it drooped in his hand. He poked its brim and it simply exhaled a magical breath toward him, as if greeting him. As a creation of the system, Demao bore him no ill will. Was it hungry before? Now that it's full, it's calm. He turned the magic-infused hat over in his hands, then tried it on. The moment Noah placed the World Ender's magic hat on his head, the blue light in the hat's grinning mouth brightened. A mysterious power began to spread from the hat through his body, sending a pleasant shiver down his spine. Whoa, invigorating. Noah could feel the change inside him immediately. He raised his hand and conjured a ball of magic. Its color was deeper than usual. Normally his magic ran a plain blue, shifting to green when he used a resolve rune. Now the orb was a dark blue with a hint of purple. The color change wasn't cosmetic. He could feel the power, a more destructive edge to his magic. It all came from the hat. Feels pretty good. He waved the magic outward. The casually cast spell turned into a lethal streak that smashed into the vibranium wall. The vibranium, supposed to absorb any impact, gave a faint rumble under the assault. In previous tests, when his magic struck vibranium, it had been like splashing into mud. No ripples, no effect. He hadn't expected Demao to boost his magic enough to even phase vibranium. So powerful? Noah gathered magic again. The color shifted from blue-purple to light blue and back, and he relaxed. After wearing Demao and enhancing his power, he still retained control. No sudden loss of command. Satisfied with the experiment, he asked Lysandra to conjure a mirror and checked his reflection. Holding the Canyon Maker and wearing the World Ender's magic hat, all he needed was a robe to truly cosplay a mage. As he posed, the system's voice chimed in his ear. Detected. Summoner possesses 6 complete pieces of equipment. System equipment slot is updating. Huh? Updating? Noah froze. He opened the panel and checked the equipment slot. Updating. He'd never paid much attention to that slot before. Putting gear there used to only grant passive attributes. It couldn't let him actively use an item's abilities. If he slotted the electrocution blade or magic cut, he still couldn't cut or discharge electricity from them directly. More often than not, he treated the slot like it didn't exist. If he remembered, he'd put gear there, otherwise it went into his backpack. Its presence had been minimal. But now, after collecting 6 divine items, the equipment slot was updating. Maybe this would turn it from a throwaway into something useful. He picked up the staff with the purple eyeball, the canyon maker, and inspected it more closely. If it was a mythic item as he'd thought, he couldn't see it. Maybe synthesized equipment through the system never reached mythic tier. He asked the system out loud. "Summoner," the voice replied. "Synthesized equipment are standard legendary items and will not be mythic. To forge mythic items, you may summon Orn, the fire beneath the mountain, and use his forging power." Orn. Noah smiled at the thought. As a god of forging, it made sense. The equipment slot finished updating. Equipment slot update complete. Summoner, please check the update announcement for details. Noah clicked the pop-up. The announcement read, "After the summoner collects 6 legendary items, the system will upgrade the equipment slot. After the update, placing equipment in the slot grants 70% of that equipment's abilities. This value can be increased. The number of equipment slots has been expanded by 2, can be further expanded. We hope this update improves the summoner's experience." This update actually sounds great. Noah read it twice to be sure. Now, placing equipment in the slot would grant usable abilities and effects, no longer just passive stat boosts. He decided to test it. He moved the electrocution blade from his backpack into the equipment slot. A spark of yellow lightning arced from his fingertips. Huh! He flexed his hand and felt the surge of lightning inside him. When he clenched his fist, countless bolts erupted, lighting the pristine white training room with electric brilliance. "Now I can really cosplay Thor. Thor, make way for me." He laughed as he sent lightning everywhere. "Forget Thor. Zeus, make way for me." Once he'd had his fill, Noah went through the rest of the gear, slotting all 6 items and feeling each power take effect. Magic Cut behaved similarly to Da Mao, further amplifying his magic. With Da Mao, Magic Cut, and the Canyon Maker all slotted, his magic deepened to purple and radiated a destructive aura you could sense at a glance. Guardian Angel let him unleash Holy Light, Paladin cosplay unlocked. He wasn't certain if Resurrection would function from the equipment slot, but he suspected the slot would grant a version of that power. Michael's Blessing allowed him to remove crowd control from others. Though the bell's previous calming chime didn't come through while slotted, that effect seemed best used while carrying the bell directly. He hadn't dared use the Canyon Maker inside the training room. Summoning a void rift in a populated area was risky. He planned to test it somewhere uninhabited on his estate to avoid accidentally opening something volatile, even if the void seemed calm for now. When he released Da Mao into the equipment slot, the hat looked mildly offended. It tumbled in the air, protesting being locked away. Noah promised he wouldn't keep it stowed, and the hat quieted. Some items clearly belonged on his person, like Michael's Blessing. The bell was small and convenient to carry. The hat could follow him or be hidden on his body. If it couldn't shrink, he could always use Lulu's Whimsy to make it smaller. How do I increase the 70% effect or expand the slots further? He asked himself. The announcement had said those values were upgradable but hadn't explained how. The system hadn't offered specifics, only that he must explore. Noah decided not to worry about it now. Everything else made this summon feel like a huge win. He'd gotten a hero, 2 completed legendary items, an upgraded equipment slot, plenty of potions, and the true sight wards he'd been short on. It was a jackpot. "Oh, right," he said, remembering. "There's still a fragment I haven't opened." Chapter 78. The heat starts to build. Desert Rose, Samira, 1 material for synthesis. Arcanist, Shaco. Whoa, Sunshine Boy, I don't recognize this skin. When Noah opened the 2 fragments, the hero fragment yielded Samira, a mortal, and he immediately earmarked her as synthesis material. The skin fragment produced a Joker Shaco skin. Noah didn't think much of it. If he already had Joker Shaco, he might synthesize the skin from fragments. Sigh, why isn't it Darkstar Shaco? If it were, I'd fuse him right away, he muttered. With that, his 10 pull was officially over. The haul was substantial, another solid boost to Noah's strength. He felt confident he could handle most opponents in the movies now. Only a few cosmic-scale beings, like Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, still made him uneasy. Time to go up. He'd spent most of the past 10 days down in the underground laboratory, surfacing only for meals, to play with Gwen, to take missions, and to sleep with Lysandra. Gwen had more or less settled into this world in that time and was beginning to appreciate its delights: computers, TV, and the internet. Noah worried she might become an internet-obsessed girl if this kept up. "Come on, little hat. I'll show you a new world," he said to the magic hat sitting on his head. Demao perked up at the name, its big mouth opening and closing as magic energy bubbled from it. Seeing the hat's excitement, Noah remembered to lay down a rule. "You wouldn't bite anyone, would you? Those two upstairs are your mistresses. Don't you dare attack them, or I'll lock you in the equipment slot forever." Damao's mouth, which had been flapping nonstop, froze as if startled by the threat. It darted in front of Noah and bobbed up and down, as if nodding emphatically. Noah satisfied this with a bit of magic. Damao promptly swallowed it, burped, spat a wisp of energy, then swallowed the wisp again. "Let's go," Noah said. The training room door slid open on cue. Noah walked the corridor to the underground laboratory elevator, and as he stepped out into daylight, the sun hit his face, and he stretched. Long stretches of seclusion for research were tiring. That was why he wanted to recruit talent. "Oh, by the way, Banner still hasn't called," he said to himself. Ever since General Ross had taken Banner away, there had been no contact. Noah wondered whether Banner had managed to get out on his own or whether Ross was setting a trap. For now, he decided not to rush it. If Banner didn't come out in a few days, he'd go check. He didn't truly believe Ross could control both Banner and the Hulk. Damao, new to this world like Gwen, bounced around excitedly as they walked across the villa grounds. It swooped over the fountain and the statuary, investigating everything. As Noah reached the villa entrance, Lysandra met him. "Noah," she said. Lysandra had been with him in the underground laboratory for most of the past days, only leaving briefly to prepare lunch. Seeing Noah now, she knew he intended to pause his isolation. "Lysandra, let me introduce you. This is the World Ender's magic hat. It's a moving hat," Noah said. Damao bristled inwardly at the description. A mere moving hat? It was the most powerful magic hat around, but it drifted over and circled Lysandra anyway, trying to ingratiate itself. Noah's thinly veiled threat earlier had worked. The hat had put aside some dignity. "I saw it from above," Lysandra replied. "It's a very magical creation." She had eyes everywhere in the manor. The surveillance system was essentially her gaze. She could see everything, even Noah in the shower. Damao, hovering beside her, nodded as if to confirm, "I am a very powerful hat." "Oh, Noah, you're up?" A clear, pleasant voice chimed. Gwen slipped out from behind Lysandra, her small hands clasping Lysandra's shoulders as she peered around her. Since Noah had been holed up lately, Gwen hadn't had many gaming sessions, and she'd missed them dearly. "Yeah, I've been busy. I'm planning to take a little break," Noah said, stretching with audible cracks. Damao, spotting Gwen, repeated its earlier performance and flew in excited circles around her. "Wow, a flying hat! How amazing!" Gwen cried, both of her heterochromatic eyes sparkling. The hat was about to preen proudly when Gwen added, very casually, "This fabric looks so pretty too. Can I cut a piece off?" "Snip, snip," Gwen mimed, slicing with her fingers. Damao nearly dropped out of the sky. It darted behind Noah and refused to approach, clearly intimidated. "Gwen, don't scare him," Noah said with a helpless smile. "Heh, Gwen giggled. "Oh, Noah, you said you were coming up. That's great. Come play games with me." Gwen's face lit up at the idea. She darted from behind Lysandra and grabbed Noah's hand, ready to head to their usual game room. A gentle, white hand landed on Gwen's shoulder, and a pressure stopped her short. "Gwen, you can't play yet. It's time for lunch," Lysandra said calmly. "Okay, Sister Lysandra," Gwen replied sheepishly. Lysandra still carried a lot of authority in Gwen's eyes. "Let's go eat, Lysandra. Gwen, I'll be free later. I'll play with you as much as you want." Noah's family lunch. After lunch, Noah kept his promise and spent time gaming with Gwen. "Noah, I've seen you on TV a lot lately. You're so famous," Gwen remarked during their session. "Oh, really?" Noah said casually. After the abomination incident, it was inevitable, showcasing world-transcending technology so openly guaranteed notoriety. "Yeah, they all call you a superhero," Gwen declared proudly. Chapter 79, Mage Appears. "They all call you a superhero." During the game, Gwen chattily told Noah how every news outlet in the world had been covering him for the past 10 days or more, some even calling him a superhero. Excitement laced her voice. "Do you like that name, Gwen?" Noah asked, picking up on her tone. "Yes. Hero is a beautiful word. To fight to protect this world. Gwen wants to protect this beautiful world well." Since transforming from a doll into a human, Gwen had relished everything about being alive. She'd grown fond of the world that made her feel beautiful. "Then I'll protect it well, for you too," Noah said with a smile. Gwen returned his smile, sweet and bright. "Ah, that guy is so hateful. He messed up and still blames others." They were in a team match, and with reactions far beyond ordinary players, Noah and Gwen were a formidable pairing. But one teammate, enraged at his death, had started cursing and spamming vulgarities. Gwen bristled at the cowardly blame-shifting. If he'd been standing in front of her, she swore she'd use her scissors on him. "That is hateful. Can't let him get away with it." "Lysandra, teach him a lesson," Noah said, annoyed. He didn't plan to tolerate the abuse and summoned Lysandra through the net. "No problem, Noah," Lysandra answered. In a small apartment in a predominantly black neighborhood of New York, a scrawny man with dreadlocks was loud and furious in the glow of his monitor. Neg had been bullied in real life for being thin and meek, and he'd never dared fight back. Online, though, his keyboard became his weapon. As long as he hid his IP, he could spew insults with impunity. He'd become a notorious keyboard warrior. Tonight, he'd been stomped in the game. His two teammates were dominating him, and the humiliation pushed him into a fury of typing. Just as a smug grin crossed his face, the computer screen went dead, black, and then spiderwebbed with cracks. "Mom!" Neg screamed. He was naturally timid and bolted for the door. Before he reached it, a bolt of electricity converged from every plugged-in device in the room and struck him. "Ah!" Current ripped through him. He screamed and convulsed. His dreadlocks frizzed into a blown-out afro. Smoke curled from his mouth before he collapsed to the floor. "Oh my God!" Neighbors barged in at the sound. At first, they saw a darkened, soot-covered shape on the carpet and shouted. When they got closer, they realized it was Neg and called an ambulance. At the hospital, his injuries weren't life-threatening thanks to Lysandra's controlled strike. The current wasn't fatal, but he suffered burns across his body. Afterward, Noah read the in-game notification. The opponent had quit the match. "Noah, I taught him a lesson," Lysandra reported, unconcerned about the aftermath. She didn't care beyond correcting the behavior. Seeing that the player had left, Noah grinned. "You think you're untouchable online? I can reach you through the cable." "What happened to him?" Gwen asked, curious. "He's on his way to the hospital," Lysandra replied. Gwen clasped her hands and offered a relief-tinged prayer, part satisfaction at the comeuppance. "I hope he's okay." Her smile held a little schadenfreude. "Forget him, Gwen. Let's keep playing." Noah enjoyed playing with Gwen. Since gaining the system, his leisure time had shrunk. Quests, research, tech development, and magical practice filled his days, so he treasured these simple sessions. He liked being around Gwen, and she was a pretty reason to take a break. So they spent his free time in their little two-person world. Night fell and the city lit up in neon. Commuters headed home while the nightlife woke elsewhere. Unnoticed in the night sky, a dark figure slides silently across the rooftops. When light hit him, it passed through, leaving him nearly transparent. Flying without the Source Project armor feels different, freer, Noah thought, enjoying the rush. He wasn't wearing the armor tonight. Instead, he wore magical gear, a death cap on his head, ascended gloves on his hands, a bell at his waist. Other equipment filled his slots. The full magic set amplified his powers. He had briefly been able to hover before, but now he traversed the sky freely. Activating Ghost Step increased his speed and rendered him translucent, making him harder to spot. It wasn't as fast as the Source Project armor, but the wind on his face was a new thrill. His destination, as usual, was Hell's Kitchen, the place his daily quests refreshed. Though he'd been cleaning it out for days and many gangs had fled, new ones kept appearing. He wondered if they respawned. Noah landed atop a tall building and looked down at the crime-ridden streets. He tapped the earpiece and a blue light flickered. A pair of high-tech glasses materialized over his eyes. "Lysandra, scan the area. I'm going to take care of some of these scumbags." "All right, Noah." Red dots flooded his HUD. Lyssandra's scan keyed off what Noah mentally labeled as deserving of death. The dots mapped dozens of targets. My goodness, so many. Lyssandra's voice reflected the volume. These are people you think deserve to die. No need to clear them all at once, Noah said. That many deaths would cause a panic. Let's test the dark seal on a few. He adjusted the death cap on his head and drifted down, ready to try out the soul-absorbing power of the dark seal and see what it could do. Chapter 80. Is the seal of darkness about to be lifted? Night in Hell's Kitchen was a restless thing, neon clubs and crowded night markets feeding the city's vices, while back alleys smelled of sweat and gasoline. At the end of one such alley, several burly men stood watch on either side of a heavy iron gate. They weren't allied. Their bosses were inside, negotiating. The men outside kept their distance, eyes fixed on the locked door. Inside, the scene could not have been more different. The room beyond the gate was lavish, plush carpet, two grand sofas facing each other. Two men in suits relaxed into the chairs, talking like kings. "Black, what's the situation with the goods?" asked the man in the black suit, drawing on a cigar and exhaling smoke. "They're perfect, fresh, the latest stuff," Black said with a grin that flashed a mouthful of gold teeth. He wore a white suit, his voice greasy with pride. "We used new suppliers. One taste and they're hooked for life." The man in the black suit snorted. "Don't dodge the question, Leighton. I asked you about those girls." Black shrugged. "Don't be impatient. You know Hell's Kitchen hasn't been quiet lately. Some superhero's been stirring things up. We've got to be discreet." He lifted a glass of whiskey and drank. "But yes, they've arrived from all over the world. Young, beautiful, high demand. We'll make a fortune." "That's only the beginning," the black-suited man said, smiling at the thought of easy money. "Once the bosses see these, the cash will start rolling in." "Take me to them," the other said, eyes gleaming. They clinked glasses and laughed like men who thought luck was finally with them. A single gunshot cracked from outside the gate. The laughter died. Both men snapped their heads toward the door. On the rooftops above, Noah had already been watching. Using Lyssandra's scan functions, he had mapped the building. Guards at the gate, the two men in the room, and several blue points marking adjacent rooms. Lyssandra's markers had identified those blue points as girls, captives from different parts of the world. Noah's expression hardened. They'd been trafficking people, hiding them behind luxury and whiskey. He thought of what they were for, and the bile rose in him. "Scum," he muttered. "Tonight you won't make it to hell. You'll become the nourishment for the dark seal." His wizard hat felt the change. Its little stitched mouth widened as if sensing his anger. Magic flared. The hat's runes and the air around Noah burned with cold blue flame. Lyssandra's enchantments lifted him down from the rooftop, carrying him into the alley. He landed silently, barely disturbing the dust. At first, the guards didn't notice. Then a faint flicker of blue moved through the darkness. "What's that?" one of them muttered, hand dropping to a pistol at his waist. They turned, wary. A silhouette approached beneath the blue glow. A tall figure in a purple, glowing wizard hat, mismatched metal gloves, and a long black robe that shimmered oddly. The robe was a temporary piece Lysandra had crafted from vibranium at Noah's request. He hadn't bothered to draw proper mage robes yet and used the alloy as a stand-in. To the guards, he looked like a fool in a cosplay costume. "Heh, Halloween came early," one of the men joked. The white-haired man laughed and nodded at the blonde next to him. "I heard about you, Limbreaker. You like breaking limbs. Where have you been hiding lately?" Limbreaker gritted his teeth and shot back. "Blame the swift-wind swordsman. The boss told us to keep low. Can't use our hands like we want to." Their jokes were masks for nerves. Noah didn't wear it as a joke. Calm as a winter night, he stepped forward. "Boss, that's a target if I ever saw one," the white-haired man said, tilting his head and motioning. The smile on Limbreaker's face went cruel. He drew his pistol and leveled it at Noah's leg. "Kid, you picked the wrong alley," Limbreaker snarled and pulled the trigger. The shot cracked. For a heartbeat, Limbreaker expected the scream and the sight of blood. Instead, the bullet hung in the air before the wizard-clad stranger, suspended as if hitting an invisible wall. "What the?" someone breathed. Noah's finger twitched. The bullet, frozen in midair, shuddered and then lurched forward, propelled by magic faster than it had ever flown out of the muzzle. It blasted back into Limbbreaker, striking exactly where he'd aimed. The round tore through his leg, shearing bone as it exited. Limbbreaker screamed, collapsing to the ground as bone fragments and blood marked the alley. The name Limbbreaker suddenly seemed less like a boast and more like a cruel irony. The rest of the thugs snapped to action. Pistols came out in a chorus of metal and swearing. The white-haired man had enough sense to fall back behind the others, but the hail of bullets still cut the air. Bang, bang, bang. They fired, but the wizard wasn't there. The blue glow blinked, then vanished. What? Where did he go? One guard shouted, panic seeping into his voice. Noah had already moved, silent, deadly, a ghost with a hat. The girls in the nearby rooms were still alive, still marked by Lyssandra's blue points. He had no time for theatrics. The seal these monsters were trying to feed would not taste anything tonight. He would make sure of it.